Hey guys, welcome to part 6 of What If Naruto Was Adopted by Hyuga Clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 35. Chi Chronicles PT-1, Suzume. The Chi Chronicles. Part 1. Suzume. 12 years ago. Life was boring. Very boring. As the smallest of a nest of 5, the young cat was regarded the weakest of their group, and her lack of talent when using chakra made her inferior to most. Yet, she had a curiosity that could never be satisfied. That's how she earned her name. Too small and frail to fight, she had focused on knowledge. She couldn't beat her stronger brothers and sisters, but at least she could outsmart them. Though she had little doubt that her name, which meant wisdom, was also a subtle insult from the elders of her clan. The elders of her clan were always dismissive of her curiosity about the outer world. The tribe of the Bakeneko was secluded, and did not like to deal with humans too often. Humans, they told their kittens, were violent and rude. As such, the elders left it up to their adult clan members to decide whether they wanted to have their own summoning contracts or not. But any form of clan-wide summoning contract was forbidden. Besides, the elders knew the truth. The Bakeneko may be fierce and deathly, but their abilities lagged far behind in comparison to other tribes. They did not have the history or knowledge of the greatest of the 3 tribes, the snakes, the slugs, and the toads, nor the power of the 4 guardians of legend, whose abilities were mostly shrouded in mysteries. No, for a young and impatient kitten such as Chi, this place equaled boredom. What was this place? It was a remote island, where the Bakeneko lived, surrounded by sea and isolated from anything human. The island was nothing particularly interesting, and mainly consisted of one large mountain, in the center of the island, surrounded by forest. Spread across the island lived the Bakeneko, most of them individually, some with their young in small groups. It was not that the Bakeneko clan lacked organization. On the contrary, their elders, 6 of the oldest cats, lived on the northern slopes of the mountain, in the temple where their clan's laws were written. Not that the Bakeneko had strict laws governing them. They were rather carefree, not very interested in the outside world. They were barely even interested in each other. Apart from when they felt the urge to find a mate, of course. However, with their long lifespans, Bakeneko never had many kittens on their island. The fact that Chi's nest, despite already being 10 years old, was the last nest on the island apart from 2 cats that were now in their 50s, said enough. Their long lifespans were especially visible when looking at the oldest of the 6 elders. Haruo was many centuries old, and the one who was responsible for having the entire clan move to this island. This was because Haruo despised humans, and anything that had to do with humans. Which was rather ironic, considering the clan's most useful skill. Not that any humans dared to set foot on the island of the Bakeneko clan. The few who had survived doing that had scared all others enough so that no one really tried again. Apparently, being used as a scratching pole did not appeal to the humans, not with regular cat, and especially not when it involved 5-foot-long cats. What is it this time? The older cat sighed when he saw Chi approaching. Tomio was an older cat living near Chi's family. Her grandfather always told her to stay away from the red-furred cat, but she never really listened to him. Tomio's stories were far too interesting. I'm bored, Tomio, Chi complained. Tisk. You're far too curious for a normal kitten. You always tell me that, yet you never refuse to tell me a new story, she smirked. It would be hard for humans to recognize that she could smirk, or smile, or frown. But among the Bakeneko, they could easily see each other's expressions, mainly due to their whiskers. Pondering that, she got an idea. Tomio, is it true that humans have no whiskers? Where did you get that idea? Well, Yasu and I were talking, and she did not know what humans would look like. Of course you two would not know that, Tomio sighed. Yasu was Chi's less impulsive sister, so neither of them was old enough to know anything about the outside world. They would have to wait for another century before Haruo would even bother to think about allowing them to get off the island. But, is it true? Yes, Chi, humans do not have whiskers. But how do they communicate? I mean, that must be impossible for them. Chi managed to say while giggling at the absurd idea. Humans look differently, so they cannot be judged by our standards, Tomio explained patiently. Then, what do they look like? She finally asked the question for which she had come to Tomio. The other day, Katsuro, her grandfather, had slipped up and said that Tomio had once held a contract. So, she knew Tomio could answer her. And by the look of her whiskers, Tomio also knew there was no way out of this. Only once had he tried to refuse to answer her. But for such a curious little creature, she turned out to be surprisingly persistent. On the 5th consecutive day of nagging, he had finally given in. Looking down on the black and white kitten, he sighed, knowingly she would not give up this time either. Humans are strange creatures, completely different from us, Tomio started. They somehow manage to walk on only 2 legs, and they can even do that without a tail. They have no tail, she gasped. But how? They are really able to move like that. Yes, they are, Tomio chuckled. A little slow, and not very agile, but they manage just fine. No, what is even stranger is that they hardly have any fur. Only on the tops of their head, the humans have some hair. Some even have very long fur there. Others, those without the strange bumps on their chests, even have some fur on the lower end of their heads. There are different kinds of humans. There are, Tomio nodded sagely. Just like we have males and females, so do the humans. 2 legs, mostly nude, strange bumps, she summarized. But, you said they were completely different. Surely there must be more differences. Well, apart from their strange looks, they also behave quite differently from us. Humans are very social, usually, and often live in large herds. Well, we might call it a herd of humans, but they call it villages or cities. Cities. A city is a place where many humans live, Every human lives in their own house, well, every family. Parents live together, and it seems like humans consider it indecent when they mate with various others. They do. But, how do they reproduce? Humans choose their bond mate, and they live their entire lives together. Though, there are humans who try to breed with other humans aside from their mate, but like I just said, humans seem to think that this sort of behavior is indecent. Strange. Don't humans ever grow tired of each other? Don't they wish for some solitude? They do, actually, but human behavior is full of paradoxes. For one, they talk about desiring peace, but that desire always brings them to war. Humans are rather odd, and they often attack others when thinking they protect what is theirs. Everything that seems to be at odds with their way of living is usually considered as something hostile. But, doesn't our clan also think like that? I heard Haruo doesn't like you because you think differently from him. True, Tomio chuckled. But the difference is that I'm not treated like an outcast, and I even might have been part of the elders if Haruo thought differently about me. Lady Nibby knows I'm old enough for it. Do the humans also worship Lady Nibby? She asked curiously. Lady Nibby was the figure their clan worshipped, their goddess, so to speak. Her grandfather often told Chi stories about how they lived on this island because Lady Nibby, her true name, was only known by the elders of their clan, had brought them here. It was even said that Haruo was her first follower, and that his power and wisdom exceeded their own because of the gifts that Lady Nibby had bestowed on him. Tomio knew that from a human perspective, Haruo wasn't just the worldly leader of their clan, but also their spiritual leader. Sadly, Tomio had also come to think that their patriarch had gotten more and more convinced of his own greatness. Over the centuries, their old leader had become more intolerant and strict, allowing but few of their clan to leave their island. It is also why Katsuro, in all his wisdom, tried to limit Chi's seemingly boundless curiosity as much as possible, a practice that Tomio thought to be unhealthy. We cannot refuse to allow our kittens to grow. But if our young are held back because the old don't dare to tread any further, perhaps I should just try to teach Chi the truth about the world. Perhaps she can change our world. The humans do not worship Lady Nibby, as they have different gods from ours. There are multiple. Chi nearly fell over. Ever since she was born, they were told about Lady Nibby, who was interwoven with their clan's history. How could humans be so different from the Bakeneko? For most of the day, Tomio told Chi about the things he had seen in the human world. How he had made a contract, nearly 2 centuries ago, with a strong woman who wished to protect her herd. He told of how he had fought alongside her, how the humans had both a terribly dark side to their nature, but also were capable of good. Humans could be the monsters that Chi's elders told her they were, but could also be better than any Bakeneko. Still, Tomio had convinced her that the human world was a dangerous place. How else would such an esteemed Bakeneko get such a scar on his back? Where did you go this time? Katsuro grunted, lifting his head as he had just woken from his slumber. Just walking around, Gramps, she responded defensively. Tomio again. What do you care, Grandpa? You never bother the others when they are away. They don't have that defect you have, Katsuro grumbled dismissively. Ugh, quit your nagging already. Show some respect, Katsuro lashed out, startling Chi. While Chi was still young, and smaller than a regular house cat, Katsuro had lived for several centuries, and had reached the full adult length of 5 feet long ago, not to mention that his tail had split completely. This was quite an honor for a Bakeneko, considering that only a very few achieved this. Perhaps only 10 of the cats living on the island had fully split tails. Even Tomio, Katsuro's senior, had not achieved the twin tails status. Earn it, she countered, as she jumped off in the woods again. You really should be a little more careful, a voice sounded from behind Chi. What? She grunted, annoyed that her sister Yasu had sneaked up on her again. Gramps is quite pissed, Yasu chuckled. You know very well it's dangerous to piss off old gray fur. She chuckled weakly as she heard her sister talk about their grandfather, whose gray fur really befitted his stern attitude. Who cares? I already know our brothers are his favorites, and I am by far the least favorite. Chi, don't be so hard on yourself. I know, sis. But it frustrates me so much, she admitted. Everyone expects me to be something I'm not. Everyone demands some kind of behavior of me that stands at odds with who I want to be. I'm just tired of not being accepted. You and Tomio are the only two who even willingly talk to me. And look at how that ends up for you. Gramps ends up scolding you whenever he thinks that I did something wrong. They never want me to be curious. They don't want me at all. Yasu lied down next to her smaller sister, and pushed her head against Chi's. I know you want out of here. But please don't. It's dangerous. I don't want to lose my little sister, no matter how crazy she is. That's what makes you unique, you know, she smiled. Chi sighed. Thanks, Yasu. But even you don't understand what it is to be seen as something inferior. You're just like Mom, strong and independent, yet still caring and friendly to others. While I am all alone. Chi, the nosy little outcast of the Bakeneko clan, she thought bitterly. Why do we even live on this stupid island? Why can't I escape this stupid place? 3 days later, Chi again searched for Tomio, with new questions, of course. However, Tomio was not at his house. Thus, things became a challenge for Chi. She wasn't as playful as her rather ignorant and carefree family, but she enjoyed making a game out of these kinds of things. Pretty soon, imaginary humans hunted the little cat, as she spurted through the forest in search of her teacher. These imaginary humans didn't look anywhere near actual humans, but were rather a bunch of demonic creatures, towering over her as they were as large as the trees surrounding her. In her little fantasy world, they howled out with mindless and foul voices, as they wished to eat the tiny cat. She would not allow them to catch her. She might not be as strong as her brothers and sisters, but she was every bit as elusive and nimble. Crashing down from the trees, though still landing on her 4 paws, she finally found the cat whose scent she had been tracking. Tomio was sitting at the beach, with a somewhat sad expression on his wise red-furred face. Tomio! She exclaimed, failing to see his sadness in her own enthusiasm. After all, she was rather proud of outrunning her imaginary human pursuers, a big feat, to her young mind, considering how much longer their imaginary legs were compared to her own. Though, this was logical, now that she knew the humans only clumsily toddled around on 2 legs, without even having a tail. Tomio sighed and looked behind him. The much larger cat had heard something crash through the forest, but had not expected to meet the young kitten here. Why are you so far from your home, Chi? Who cares how far it is, can't get out of here anyway, right? She said, as her whiskers made a gesture equivalent to the human shrug. But why? I had a question. Tomio looked at the blatant curiosity in her eyes. Again. Gramps lectured us on the three great races, the toads, the snakes, and the slugs, she rattled, not paying attention to Tomio's exhausted sigh. But he did not want to tell us about the four guardians. Because there is not much known about them, Tomio said as he stretched himself. The little kitten couldn't even let him get some rest. So you do know something. What do you know about the Bakeneko tribe? Our tribe learned to manipulate chakra from the teachings of Lady Nibby. We grow very old, and our adults have split tails to indicate that they are the most powerful as well. Yes, and, well, they say we only get access to our full powers when our tails are split. And you know about the exception. The summoning contract. Well, you once said we Bakeneko could increase our individual chakra reserves by cooperating with humans who signed contracts with us. Exactly, but that is just the extent of our power. Compared to the other tribes, that isn't something special at all, Tomio explained. What does make us different is our ability to change our appearances. If an adult Bakeneko so wishes, he or she can change into a humanoid form. How did you think we created our buildings, or wrote our books? Chi's whiskers revealed her surprise. But our ability to transform, even though it is unique, even compared to the human Henge no Jutsu, is still not enough to make our tribe stand out. You know why the three are elevated above all other summoned tribes. Humans can transform too. Yes, but their skill is different from ours. Our transformation is no illusion, but something far more real. But that was not my question, Tomio remarked. She sighed, and paused for a moment to think. Gramps once said something about those tribes holding secrets, and something vague about Shitensu, or something. Senjutsu, Tomio corrected her, otherwise known as the only method to absorb the energy from the nature surrounding us, the sage mode. Because of that, those three tribes hold power far greater than others. I know, we have our ability to shape-shift, something giving us the advantage in some cases. But the power of those three tribes is far greater than the few tricks we, or most of the other clans, have. The only exceptions are formed by four beings that have become legends in their own right, not even needing something as potent as Senjutsu to prove their power. So who are those four? Haruo. Lady Nibby. No, Lady Nibby is something different, perhaps even stronger, if the rumors are correct, Tomio replied, as he wandered off with his thoughts, reliving memories back from the time he still had a summoning contract. Only once had he seen something that massive, with chakra that seemed to be limitless. And Lady Nibby was supposed to be of the same kind as that massive five-tailed horse-like being. What rumors? She asked curiously, and too impatient to wait until Tomio continued by himself. Tell me. She hopped around the much older and larger cat. I cannot. But I will tell you about the four guardians. They are known as such, because they each hold power given to them in the times when even Lady Nibby was said to be young. Those four never grew old, though their bodies changed over time almost as much as their abilities. You must understand, that those four hail from different times, when the world was said to be vastly different from the current one. Imagine, they were times when Lady Nibby and her kin could walk freely across the world. Tomio sighed. It was also the time when the humans rose up, and in their youngest days, the four guarded and guided them. Wow, they must be really old, she said, her eyes spurred wide open. They must be even more ancient than Haruo himself. Never let him hear you call him ancient, Tomio chuckled. But yes, they are older than perhaps even we can imagine. Let's see. If I recall correctly, each of the four hails from a different species, one being a turtle, another a tiger, then a bird, and lastly there is a dragon. A dragon. Do they really exist? Like in the stories? Tomio laughed gently, touched by the childlike innocence of the kitten. No, this is no dragon unlike any you have heard of in your books. This dragon is actually the only one of the four of which even a little is known, as he is the only of the four who I heard of has made a contract with a human. A dragon and a human. She exclaimed in disbelief. Those two have become legends amongst the humans, as far as I understood from those among us who have wandered the human world in more recent times. Were they that strong? Apparently, the human was already exceptional, and the dragon had given him the control over his element as a gift. Would, Tomio added, knowing what she wanted to axe. Far less is known about the others, though our oldest books say that the turtle holds power of water, and the bird has control over fire. The tiger is mostly shrouded in mystery, but it is presumed that it holds control over metal. Or was as ice? I actually don't remember. Tomio frowned. Well, his whiskers did. Anyway, the turtle is rumored to be located somewhere north of us, not that anyone knows precisely where it is. Why are they so secretive? She wondered. If they are all so strong, there is no need for them to hide, right? I do not know. She. Perhaps they do not like other species, or perhaps they just want to live their lives in peace and quiet. Who knows? I mean, if you could be that old, and know that you would not die either. I can hardly imagine what that must be like. Seems rather boring, she agreed. I suppose. After so much time, it would likely be difficult to learn something new, Tomio nodded. But, what are you looking at, she? The shores. It's like the sea withdrew while you were talking, she wondered. Tomio's hair stood out when he heard something massive grumble and approach. They had nowhere to run. Kenta was annoyed. Though he was the strongest, he was also the youngest of their group, meaning that he had to listen to his senpai. Kenta was a tall and thin man, not extremely muscular, but rather very sinewy. With his hollow eyes, and rough, medium-length hair, he had quickly gained the nickname, Yokai, the black apparition of the hidden mist. This was mostly because Kenta had excellent sensory abilities, which he combined with stealth. The vast majority of his victims never even heard him coming, before Kenta's blade ended their lives. If it had been wartime, someone with Kenta's abilities would have surely have become part of the legendary Seven Swordsmen. At least, that was what Kenta believed. The Mizukage had certainly made a grave mistake by letting that young Zabuza take the only remaining sword. With the civil war, many of the seven had defected, and some of the blades had even disappeared entirely, but Kenta would make his own legend, sword or not. The black apparition of the mist would become feared outside their country as well. Though he had to first follow orders and go on another tedious purge mission. After all, during the temporary truce, the shinobi had to do something useful, and hunting down those abominable bloodlines always kept them busy. Perhaps now, after 2 years of not being hunted because the hunters were too busy fighting in the civil war, those monstrosities would be more careless, then a good censor like Kenta would surely find someone. Her body hurt, and why was her fur all wet? She groaned as she tried to get up, but found that she couldn't. Too tired. She sighed. Where am I, anyway? Only now, she noticed she was lying on sand. On a beach, she saw as she turned towards the sound of waves. But how? Her headache was inhibiting her ability to think properly. Let's see. What is the last thing that I remember? She mused. She had been tracking, and she had found Tomio. He had taught her new things, and then something happened. She's eyes widened in shock as it came back to her. What are you looking at, she? Tomio asks. The shores. It's like the sea withdrew while you were talking, she wondered. Tomio's hair stood out when he heard something massive grumble and approach. Get to the forest, now, Tomio suddenly shouted. As both cats ran for their lives, Tomio knew they would never outrun the wall of water that was approaching. But what could he do against it? The two had barely reached the first trees as the water crashed ashore. In a split-second decision, Tomio pushed the tiny chi behind him, as he created a barrier of chakra. Tears started flowing down Chi's cheeks. Tomio, she shivered. Why did you do that? I'm running out of chakra. Tomio realized. The water didn't stop coming. Chi, completely terrified, lay curled under him, seeking protection. I could abandon her, and grab a tree in the hopes that I wash ashore. But how could I do that? No. Tomio realized his responsibility. The elders denied their kittens the right to develop freely, as they valued their own positions too much to ever risk a change in the way they lived. But the future belongs to the young. The elderly, like Tomio, had one true obligation, to protect the new generation. She felt lost. It had been over an hour since she had regained consciousness, but she did not have the will to move. Tomio had sacrificed his life so that she could escape. She couldn't fathom why, but he had expended all his remaining chakra to get her to a log. After that, she only remembered flashes of how she had to cling onto that log, then storm thunder darkness. All was wet. She felt as if even her bones were soaked, even the bruises she had collected. But none of it mattered. She was alone now. This island was clearly not the one she grew up on. Bakeneko Island had no shores like this. Not with this view. But even if she were home, Tomio was the only one who did not treat her like a burden. Even Yasu, while caring for her, only saw her as a loved, but troublesome, little sister. On one hand, she realized that this was her chance to explore the world. But, after knowing that she had lost her only real friend, she woke up again later, with the sun indicating it was past noon already. She groaned as she felt something poking her. Quit it, Yasu, she grumbled, not fully realizing where she was. The poking stopped. Good. Her body hurt too much to have someone poking her. Wait. Pain? She wondered for a second, before all the grief caught up with her again. Saddened, she curled up. She heard someone gasp for breath, and the poking started again. Stat up, sweep head, the thing babbled. Wait, I was on a different island. That's not Yasu. She realized, as she observed who was bothering her. A tiny two-legged creature with a wide grin stood next to her. It was covered in some kind of bluish piece of cloth. And strange enough, it had no fur, other than some pink, nearly red, fur on the top of its head. What? What are you? She wondered. Zuzu, the pinkish two-leg exclaimed. Zuzu found you, it pointed proudly at its chest. No, you are far too little to be a human. Are you some kind of ape? Pape. The creature tilted its head, as if its confused expression wasn't clear enough already. What a pape. Whatever it tried to say, she was completely confused. Apes shouldn't be talking, right? Unless it was another tribe of summons, like her Bakeneko clan. I am she finally decided to show some proper manners. After all, if it wasn't human, she should at least show some respect. What clan do you belong to, Pinky? Amshi. It wondered. Hi Amshi. Me Zuzu. It laughed. Mommy. It charged off. She was puzzled. What was an Amshi? Or was the creature dumb enough to mishear her? In that case, could Zuzu be its name? That pinkish two-leg makes no sense at all. Is it of some tribe of intoxicated dwarves? She wondered. Fairy tales always had dwarves in them, and it was common knowledge that those dwarves only drank the forbidden drink. Yes, it must be. That would explain why it talks like that. She knew, as she had seen some of the older cats of her tribe talk like that too, when it was the season for the drink. That was also why her grandfather had told her that this would be a forbidden drink for her, until she was at least be a century old. Torn, as she was both curious to see where the dwarf had gone, and hesitant to leave the beach, she looked back at the ocean once more. But she knew, no matter how much she wished it, Tomio would not return and he would scold her if she gave up now. So she stood up, her body still hurting but not as badly as earlier, and walked in the direction at which the dwarf had gone. Although when she reached the edge, she looked back once more. I am sorry Tomio. I will never forget you, she said to herself. Goodbye. Scared, Shiori paced through the thin line of trees that was between their house and the beach. Her child had run off again. I swear, I should almost tie that girl to a chair, she fumed to no one in particular. A crack, a voice, and Shiori felt like she could breathe again. Mommy. The little girl charged at Shiori, completely oblivious of her concern. Shiori sighed as the girl hopped around her, in an attempt to tell her something about a plushie, but she didn't have the time for this. Suzume. She kept her voice strict, though the abrupt change from the cheering girl into a slightly shocked look amused her that much that she could hardly keep her face serious. But she had to. Suzume. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you to stay indoors? Yes, mommy. Suzume nodded her head, obviously ashamed, even though Shiori doubted that the child fully understood what she did wrong. After all, it had been hardly a month since Suzume had celebrated her second birthday. Then, more sounds came from the shrubbery next to them, as a black cat, covered with white spots, appeared. So you found a cat? Shiori asked Suzume. Ashi. Her daughter smiled broadly. Tisk. I told you it was Chi, not Ashi or Anshi, a voice sounded. It's a bit unexpected to find such a large dwarf too. But the books said dwarves always lived in packs or herds. Startled, Shiori looked around. But there was no one here. Who was that? She questioned, as she pulled her daughter close to her. Down here, two-leg, the cat spoke up, almost with a sarcastic tone. Shiori looked down. The cat looked up, at the taller version of the dwarf. This taller two-legged creature had the same strange hair color, only much brighter and redder. And the same strange lack of fur. Now that she looked better, she also noticed neither of the two-legged creatures had tails. What? Shiori screeched. She tilted her head. Please don't scream like that, loud two-leg, my head hurts. You talk. What are you? Yes, I can talk, she sighed. What, is this the first time that you are seeing a cat? And no. Shiori stumbled. But they are supposed to be, well, you know. Tisk. Hey, pinkish two-leg, is this red two-leg your two-leg? She shifted her focus from the flabbergasted woman to the smiling child. Mommy. Suzume pointed to the taller woman, as if that explained everything. She looked, and noticed that the taller woman had the same kind of face and eyes as the shorter one. You're her kitten. She wondered. What kind of thing are you? We are humans, what else? Shiori frowned. Humans. That's impossible, she exclaimed, her eyes wide. Humans are much taller, and savage. Shiori lowered her head, and looked sad. I can't deny that. Many of us are savages. She paused and sighed. But not every human is like that. Now, can you tell me who you are? Or even better, what you are? As I told Pinkish Two-Leg, my name is Chi. I am granddaughter of Katsuro, and member of the Bakeneko clan. Clan? Are you a shinobi? Shiori asked as she pulled Suzume, who tried to get to the cat, back. I am a Bakeneko, not a shibio or whatever, she scoffed. Don't you humans know anything? Tired, but content, Mitsuo returned to his home. The brown-haired, rather plain-looking man was in his mid-20s. He had just spent the entire day in the field, plowing and sowing the seeds for the next harvest. It was exhausting work, but rewarding enough. Not that he and Shiori owned much, but they had enough to support their little family. As long as they had enough to feed Suzume, and themselves, Mitsuo would be happy. After all, wealth would only draw attention. In this accursed region, attention was the last thing they would want to have. After all, these islands were too close to the influence of Kurigakure. Anyone carrying a bloodline limit in this region had to be careful. The hunters were always watching. Mitsuo sighed. Luckily, their little island only had two little villages, one with a harbor, and lived off agriculture and fishing. The people here weren't exactly rich, but they had enough to be content. In addition, the land was rich enough to afford the protection fees of Kurigakure, which amounted to protection from Kurigakure, most of the time. Their shinobi were arguably worse than any regular band of bandits. But, it had already been more than 2 years since the last time anyone on their island was attacked. Still, Mitsuo knew that he shouldn't be fooled by a false sense of peace. Especially now that Suzume would grow up. Perhaps, in a few years, she would show the first serious signs of possessing the same ability that he possessed. It would be a disaster if anyone saw that. All these things brought a slight frown to Mitsuo's face, apart from him being tired from the long day working. Honey, I'm home, he called out upon opening the door. He smiled as he heard a shout, and the quickly approaching little footsteps, as he saw his daughter charge at him. Daddy. She frowned in her Bakeneko fashion. So, on one end there were two legs with strange bumps on their chest, while the other did not. So far, she understood it, as Tomio had told her that. The chibi was more confusing. Kittens were supposed to be similar to their parents, but smaller. Why did this child, because that is what Big Red Two-Leg had called her kitten, seem so different from the adult species? Not even mentioning the appearance, the behavior of the chibi was even stranger to Chi. The little two-leg is completely helpless, and ignorant of everything, even when its curiosity is even worse than my own, she considered. At least the bigger two legs seem to be aware of it. Yet, they say it is normal. Humans are truly odd. Perhaps this is why they live in herds. Though this herd only seems to consist of 3 two legs. Well, and me now. Strange, why did the flat-chested two-leg accept me so easily? And the big crimson two-leg truly seemed to be concerned about my condition. I thought humans were monsters. Needless to say, she was completely confused. Her elders had always told how despicable humans were. Yet these three, so far, proved the complete opposite of it. Humans were strange, and with nowhere to go, she decided that staying with them would just prove to be a good opportunity to study them. Zuzu Sweepy, the child yawned, walking up to Chi. Before the cat realized what the child was doing, Suzume lay down and cuddled up to Chi. Chi looked at the child, somewhat bewildered by its behavior. Sleep tight, Chibi two-leg, Chi whispered gently, folding her long tail around the child to keep her warm. Kenta had sensed something. It was faint, but that was to be expected. After all, those abominations with their bloodlines had been able to survive the earlier purges, so their ability to mask their chakra was expected to be good. Still, something was wrong about the chakra Kenta felt. He couldn't explain it, thus annoying his captain, but somehow there was something inhuman about the trace he felt. It was more inhuman than any other bloodline freak he had met before this moment. Although Kenta had urged caution, the group went out to see what they had found. To their collective surprise, they found a single man sitting near a campfire. At least, if you could call it a man. His pale skin and yellow eyes made him look creepy. Almost like a snake. And this close, Kenta could feel what was wrong about the man. He is not just hiding his chakra, he is also suppressing it to a much larger degree than I've ever felt before, Kenta realized. Looking up into Kenta's eyes, the man chuckled. Now what do we have here? Senpai, Kenta whispered, turning to his captain. We need to get out of here. Now. I suppose you already know it is too late to run, the man in front of them hissed. He looked curiously at Kenta's expression. Interesting, so you would use them as a diversion. Kenta grimaced. How could this guy see through him like this? Who and what was this guy? Anxious, Kenta tried to step back. If his idiotic team wanted to fight, then they could throw away their lives. Kenta refused to go down with them. But Kenta couldn't move. What's going on? The pale, snake-like man stood up and walked towards them. It's been a while since someone managed to track me down like this. Should I kill them? A voice sounded up from behind Kenta. Shit. I focused too much on that freak and missed the other guy. Damn it all. Kenta mentally cursed. No, not the black hair. Kazu. He intrigues me. The others are disposable. Get rid of them. As you wish, the voice answered coldly. Frozen at his position, Kenta could not even turn his head, but from the corners of his eyes he saw black objects pierce his companions, while his captain was strangled by a similar black thing. Another bloodline freak. Kenta grumbled softly. He is a Nara, the snake-like man replied casually. So yes, I suppose that fits your less charming description. But tell me, who are you? Depends, what do you want from me? Kenta countered, as he quickly realized he made a mistake, feeling something slide over his body, grabbing and almost crushing his arms. Now, no need to be too rude, Kazu, the snake-like man said suavely. I am not the kind of person who likes to throw away people who have a lot of promise. You are the first one in several years who managed to track me down when I didn't want to be found, so I would like to see if you are worthy enough to be recruited. Recruited? Kenta frowned. Why would I risk getting hunted by Kiri? I offer power in return, the man smirked. There are many jutsus that I can share with you, so that you can grow beyond what you are now. Orochimaru knew that the man had caught the bait, the moment Kenta's eyes spurred open, and the Sannin suppressed his smirk. After all, it had not been hard to see that this man had a strong desire for more power. And greed was so easy to use. It's not like I have any choice, and I'm not going to throw away my life for that shitty village, Kenta decided. My name is Kenta, also known as the yokai, the black-haired ghost of the hidden mist. I may not be the strongest of Kurigakure, but there is no better tracker in my village. Former village. Orochimaru's smile widened. Skilled, proud, and selfish. This kind of man would be a very suitable servant. Though, Kenta had yet to prove his loyalty to him. Good. I am Orochimaru, of Konohagakure. And as I promised, I will give you more power. But before you get your reward, I need you to track down someone. You see, There is a certain someone that I am looking for. In the following weeks, she found out how weird humans were. Eating, for instance, was done at set times, and always together with the entire herd. All kinds of strange rituals were also conducted with the food, something which Shiori called cooking. Sometimes food actually tasted better, but most of the times, especially when considering vegetables, she was just glad she had her own food. After all, a bakeneko had different tastes than an ordinary human. That was another thing she found extremely strange. Humans always seemed to live together. On her island, she was used to everyone pretty much living their own lives. But here, humans were much closer. Especially when it came to Suzume, of whom Shiori and Mitsuo were extremely protective. While Shiori was mostly at home, doing all kinds of chores, Mitsuo was away from home for most of the day. This was a ritual that they called work, she found. Just like the food ritual, the work ritual was done daily. Strangely, these rituals also happened at some set time. That was another confusing thing for Chi. They had a time-controlling device which Shiori called a clock. Well, Mitsuo called it a damned annoyance, but that was something that he should not say, as Shiori considered it rude. She understood the woman's carefulness, as the device seemed to control their daily schedule. She could only imagine the horrors that would occur if the device was angered. Especially to her, as her daily milk and food were prepared at the same times the humans had their food. But while the two older humans were oddly organized, the little one seemed to do everything in its limited power to disrupt that organization. As such, it had become Chi's chore to look after the child. It was a rather dangerous occupation, considering Suzume's obsession with Chi's long and furry tail. Once the child got hold of it, it proved exceedingly difficult to break her grasp. But still, she found that the little one needed her protection the most. The child was completely oblivious to everything, and continuously charged on with an enthusiasm that she found almost absurd, though equally endearing. The hugs and kisses the child gave weren't too bad. When it was eating or drinking, she knew that it would be better to stay away though. Human kittens were messy eaters, and she hated for her fur to get dirty, especially after Shiori introduced her to the torture device the humans called a bath. At that moment, she fully understood Tomio's warning, and realized how horrible the humans could be. Yes, humans were strange to Chi. Even their mating behavior was strange. They virtually threw the cat out of the room when she interrupted them one day. But as odd as they were in the eyes of the little kitten, she could not say they were anywhere near foolish when it concerned their own safety. However, it eluded her why they were so scared of other people, at least until that one night, when Mitsuo sang his daughter a bedtime song. Listening in, she felt the chakra flowing from the man, creating a mild and soothing illusion. Before the cat really knew what happened, she was as fast asleep as Suzume herself. Chapter 36. Chi Chronicles PT2, Taken. Do you actually trust that man to retrieve his target? Nara Kazu repeated, with a cynical tone. He was sitting near the forest line where they had set up camp. After all, their guest needed to rest. He is a greedy man, Orochimaru chuckled. So yes, if he is as capable as I think he is, he will succeed. Tisk. So much trust in an unknown man. Kenta-kun wants to gain power. And he doesn't care about the methods. Didn't you notice how he acted? I did, Kazu frowned. Even though it was a while back, he could recall that day perfectly. After all, he was a genius worthy to lead his clan if he had lived in a reasonable world without favoritism. You said Kenta noticed you, Orochimaru-sama. That wasn't all, Kazu-kun, Orochimaru smirked, pausing to let the Nara figure it out by himself. He noticed you, and knew something was wrong. That is why his team took the cautious approach. Kenta knew well enough that his team was already dead, so he set up the formation so that he would have the chance to escape, Kazu reasoned. Indeed. Like you, Kenta is only loyal to himself. His sensory abilities surprised me, as well. If what he told us was true, he noticed me far sooner than anyone should have been able to. I suppressed my chakra to such a degree that even that fool of a Jiraiya should not have been able to track me down. No, this boy is special, and quite the useful pawn in the game that will unfold. Still, you only gave him the least important target, Kazu deduced. Of course, we knew the location of our target, after his foolish clan nearly annihilated itself with that pointless assault on Kurigakure. And this bloodline is far more important. Indeed. I was dying to get my hands on the Shikatsumyaku Kekkei Genkei, Orochimaru whispered, as his long tongue hung out of his mouth. So keep the boy safe in the hideout, Kazu. I would not be able to forgive you if you lost sight of this boy. I need focus on the experiments first. Let me know when Kenta returns. Yes, Orochimaru-sama, Kazu bowed, not completely able to suppress the shiver of excitement he felt when hearing the threat. In this boring world, Orochimaru was one of the few who could instill this fear. Kazu loved that emotion. In fact, there were but few things that triggered any kind of emotion with Kazu well, besides torture, of course, he conceded to himself. What was that, yesterday, Mitsuha two-leg? Chi axe. Ah, you mean that song? Mitsuha said, cautiously. I suppose there is no harm in telling you. The man sighed, and looked around. My father was a shinobi, he started. He lived in Kurigakure, at least until the wars came. Well, it wasn't just the war that forced him away, but rather how people responded to it. You see, all those wars created a very strong hatred amongst the people, hatred against the bloodlines which had caused the most victims. As such, the families cursed with a bloodline limit had to hide. Like me, completely hiding our chakra from anyone, and being cautious for every single moment. Bloodline limit. She questioned. It is the condition when people are born with certain skills that no one else can master. For instance, there are people who can somehow create and manipulate elements like ice. But such a feat is virtually impossible for anyone who does not have that specific bloodline limit. It would require a very specific balance and control of multiple types of chakra, which is extremely difficult for anyone not born with such a gift. In the wars between nations, as well as during the multiple civil wars, the people with bloodline limits were feared the most. Because of that, the ordinary people began hating those with bloodline limits. Consequently, most bloodlines within our nation were exterminated. And what you did by singing, this is because you have a bloodline limit as well. She deduced. So that is why you are so secretive, and keep yourself and your nest away from other herds. Mitsuha blinked. I possess the ability because of my father, but my wife possesses no such ability, as she doesn't carry that bloodline. We cannot be completely sure about Suzume, as she is too young to show us if she has the same ability or not. But if she does have it, and people find out, Mitsuha half looked over his shoulder, she would have no control over it at this age, making it too dangerous for her to be around other people. That is why we forbid her to sing. Because, if others find out, they will hunt us down and kill us, Mitsuha sighed. Why not leave? I once asked my father that same question. He told me that the other nations would be dangerous for us to go to as well. Foreigners are usually distrusted, especially foreign shinobi. It would be hard for us to start a new life in another country, especially if it meant that we had to leave everything behind. You see, migration is something which the bloodline hunters are the most suspicious of. If we had to leave, the normal way at least, we would have to go to the docks and take a ship towards the great harbor on the island north of us. From there the shipping routes lead to the mainland. With the ships, either they check your blood, or you have a chance that you are trapped by slavers. I see, travel is too dangerous in the lawless lands. Yes, Chi, and though the mainland is said to have calmed down a little now that the wars have ended, I still don't want to risk the safety of my family. Not when things here seem to be calming down at last. It has been a while since we've last seen the hunters on our island. So for as long as no one suspects us. That means as long as Suzume doesn't give you away, she deduced. I see, I suppose I will have to be more careful now. Especially with the kitten. Child. Thanks, Chi, the man smiled. Seeing Suzume waddle around, she felt sorry for the child. Just when I think the humans are not as bad as the stories made them look like, I hear something like this. What kind of insane creature would persecute other creatures solely for the fact that they were born? As if a two-leg like her has any choice. No creature has. We are born innocent. We cannot help what we are. She couldn't decide whether it was the ignorance, or the long-lasting hatred itself, which was the problem. People like Mitsuha and Shiori showed that humans were capable of good. But why were there other humans that would label these people as evil, just because of their blood. Even if they have dangerous abilities, it says nothing about the intention they have, she mused. As if a tool could be evil, it's not, it's the will behind it that is good or evil. No bloodline ability could truly be evil. It frustrated her a bit. Just when she thought she had figured the humans out, she realized that she didn't understand humans at all, especially if they were as hateful as she now heard. Would she even want to know any more humans? Were the humans really the scum that her elders told her? Lost in thought, Suzume used the distraction to sneak up to Chi. Before the poor cat knew what happened, the child grabbed her, lifted her up, and ran with her to the shoreline. Oh no, not this again. She uttered in despair. Let me go. Let me go. Not the water. Splash. Laughter. No. Of all the feeding rituals the humans had, one way was by far Chi's favorite. It was a little slippery creature, which did not even have any legs at all. The humans called this no-legged creature, fish. Unlike the regular ritual, this was preceded by something called fishing. She didn't see the logic of it, considering how humans weren't porking before eating pork meat. Nor were they cowing because of eating the meat of that four-legged creature. But hey, she wasn't expecting any logic at this point. She had lived amongst humans for several months now, so she had accepted that understanding their logic in naming things would be a never-ending struggle with little to no reward. Most of the time, she just described things as she saw them, rather than making the effort to remember the human name of it. The same went for the names of humans themselves. Though, she did use the names of those who had earned her respect. But today, she joined Mitsuha on his fishing ritual. Even if this involved a lot of water, as the no-legs had found a way to stay alive under the water. The latter was quite remarkable, as they never seemed to be very intelligent. She hated water with a passion, even more so due to the events that had brought her to this island. But the rewards outweighed the risk of getting a wet fur. Thus, Mitsuha had taken off with a small wooden construct that floated on the water. From there, he used some strange device, a long branch with a rope on it. According to Mitsuha, those things were used to catch the fish. But so far, she remained rather skeptical. Mitsuha, on the other hand, smiled as he saw the black and white cat stare at the bobber that floated on top of the water. Don't be too impatient, Chi, they'll bite eventually. She looked up, in what Mitsuha recognized as the, what do you mean, look. This was usually followed by the, explain everything you know, look that Mitsuha had grown wary of. There is some bait at the end of the line. When the fish bites, trying to eat the bait, it will be caught as the hook on which the bait is attached latches into its flesh, he quickly explained, before the little cat would add all kind of odd fantasies to it. Are those no legs really that stupid? She wondered. So, the fewer legs a creature has, the less intelligent it is. No, Mitsuha nearly choked in laughter after the cat had still managed to catch him off guard. Legs don't mean a thing. Really, I am still surprised that you have never seen other people before. Humans were not welcome on our island, she sighed, though she did think the man made a good point. After all, of the three humans, Shiori seemed to be the most intelligent, while Mitsuha had that odd-looking, and seemingly useless little third leg. So apparently the number of legs did not determine how smart a creature was. Perhaps it's the lack of whiskers, she mused. So you said before. But you never really said much about your home. What was it like? It was just an island, much like this one, but with a big mountain in the center. The forests were a lot denser though, she said, though with some reluctance. She didn't like to think too much about the home she had been forced to leave behind. Sounds like a perfectly peaceful place, Mitsuha smiled. Why did you leave? I know you've been avoiding answering it, but still you. I suppose it is right to question it, considering the information you entrusted me with, she cut him off. She sighed. But my home, I didn't leave by choice. Like I told you, I was swept away by a large tidal wave. The reason why I didn't want to talk about it was because my only friend, my teacher, threw away his life to save me. So that is why she always appeared to be so sad, Mitsuha realized. I am sorry, I didn't know. Don't be. I now know it was Tomio's own choice. I know he could have saved himself, but he did not want to leave me. I suppose I can understand now. I wouldn't leave someone who was helpless, like Suzume, behind in order to save my own whiskers. No, the only thing I regret is that I was helpless. I never want to be helpless again, she declared, though almost whispering at the end. You shouldn't blame yourself, Chi. Nature has a will of its own. We mortals have just got to live under its reign, Mitsuo sighed. You should proudly live your life, in his honor. How could I be proud? Two-leg. He died. She shook her head. Sometimes I wish I could just forget it. Stop feeling hurt. You don't want that. Never forget about him. Even if it would give you a false sense of freedom, it would be the bad thing to do. Your memories of those you lost are the only things you have to remember them by. Love does not end where life ends. I know you are right, but it does not change the way I feel. Have I ever told you how I met Shiori? Mitsuo wondered. She shook her head, a gesture she had copied from Suzume. 12 years ago, my father and I arrived at a nearby island, looking for a job. We were disguised as fishermen, I believe. Or was it as sailors? Well, it doesn't matter. We were on the run for the bloodline hunters, who had nearly caught us a few months before that, so we tried to build up a new life. And there you met Red Hair Two-Leg. No. Well, yes, I did meet her once, when I walked in the village, but she didn't really notice me. You see, she was the daughter of the mayor of that village, so she would not take notice of a poor brat like me. Though I do admit I was fascinated by her hair. I never saw someone that beautiful, Mitsuo smiled as he thought back. No, we came to know each other a few weeks after that. The hunters that had been tracking us believed we had come to that island, but they were frustrated because they couldn't find us. My father had drilled me in chakra control ever since I was a little boy, so they could not sense us as we hid outside the village. So the hunter two legs left. No, Mitsuo sighed. The hunters, a normal village has little manpower. Only a couple of guards, often not even trained properly. But the hunters, they were fully trained shinobi, each able to easily defeat a dozen regular warriors. The hunters knew they could do whatever they want to, as there was no one to stop them. I've seen that happen many times now, when people who normally live under a very strict regime suddenly gain the freedom to do whatever they want, they turn into something worse than animals. What did they do? She asks, not liking where this was going. They captured several women, for their amusement. I heard that the mayor just stood by as they dragged away his wife, but Shiori ran away. She was young, and the cruelty they would inflict on such a young girl, Mitsuo grimaced as if he remembered something bad, but she was afraid to ask. By chance, she ran towards the place where my father and I were hiding. Two hunters ran after her, seeing the chase as just a game before they could have their fun. When I saw them catch up with her, I couldn't control myself. I knew I had to keep hidden, or risk getting killed myself, but I couldn't abandon that girl to such a fate. It was a good thing the hunters had already drank too much, as the second man could not respond after I killed the first. That day was the first time I ever killed someone, Mitsuo frowned. But it also meant we had to run away again. And that Shiori's life would be forfeit if she stayed there. I convinced my father to take her along, and she was desperate enough to agree. Well, cutting a long story short, ever since leaving that island, we moved 3 times, just to cover our tracks, before we arrived at this place. We built this house here and started living as simple farmers. And after a year or so, Shiori and I got married. My father died 3 years after, when Shiori was pregnant with Suzume, Mitsuo concluded with a sad sigh. I never knew Shiori Two-Leg had had such a rough life, she frowned in her feline way. The three of you always seem to be so happy. It is because we know pain, that we enjoy life so much. I suppose you are right. But when are those no legs going to bite? She faced away, trying to change the subject as he had given her much to think about. For one of the first times in her short life, she began to think that she had too much to think about. Patience. Patience. In the end, Mitsuo caught too much fish. So, the day after, he sold what was left in the neighboring village. She, on the other hand, took some time off. She wandered the landscape for a while, not so much out of curiosity, but rather to have some time alone. After all, Mitsuo's words had made her think about what life and death were truly about. And those were not the things to think about while a 2-year-old did her absolute best to catch your tail, a game that Suzume loved to play. Despite the risk, she never had the heart to tell her to stop. In fact, she doubted she could ever deny the child anything. Well, bathing was an exception. Lying on top of a tree branch, she suddenly jerked up her head. Something is off, she immediately realized. What is this chakra? She hadn't wandered off far, and quickly ran back. Standing outside the house, was a tall and thin man, with black hair that reached to his shoulders. The man carried a short sword in one hand, and a pink-haired bundle in the other. Suzume! She cried out as she charged at the man. The man's smile vanished as he looked dismissively at the incoming cat. If he had been surprised by seeing a talking cat, he didn't show it. With the flat side of his blade he lashed out, knocking Chi away. Apparently it isn't just human stupidity to shout before charging, the man mumbled as he looked down at the unconscious creature. Not that it would have mattered, as he sensed her come near anyway. Though the odd chakra signature had given him the idea he would have faced something more interesting than just a little cat. He sheathed his sword and walked back to the house. The woman he had knocked out, after taking the child, was still on the ground, with the wounds on her body, especially the cuts on her face, bleeding profusely. Kenta sighed. I wasted enough time tracking this damn kid down already. I can't understand why he wants to have this specific bloodline in his possession. That damned island he sent me towards was obviously a dead end, and this entire search felt so freaking aimless. But I doubt even I would have been able to track it down if it had not been for this stupid kid to be singing. Ah well, I better hurry back now. Too bad for this woman. Even after that beating I gave her, she looks good enough to be a nice little plaything for a while longer, but dragging her along would only slow me down. And I had my fun with her anyway, Kenta chuckled out loud, thinking back. He loved this part of his job as a bloodline hunter. The power over ordinary people, the power to do whatever you want to do. Although Kenta preferred somewhat chubby women, punching them or cutting them, all women just looked so beautiful when in pain. The added despair she had felt due to him having her child in his hands made torturing her even more fun. Now I had better get rid of the evidence, he frowned. He knew his fellow hunters would recognize his work if they saw this woman's mutilated body. His twisted hobby was something that caught the attention of others, though Kenta himself never understood why. Well, not that he really cared about the others in the first place. It was not his fault that they did not see the beauty of his art. Placing a few explosive notes, Kenta walked off. As he reached the shore, he heard the house explode. Bye-bye, red hair, he mumbled as he hummed a song. He threw the unconscious child in his boat, and pushed the boat back into the water. And now it is time to claim my reward from that snake, he grinned. Chapter 37. Chi Chronicles PT3, Lost. Void. Mitsuo couldn't remember ever having felt so empty. He had felt sorrow when his mother died, but his father had been at his side. He had grieved for his father's illness and death, but Shiori's love helped him through it. But now, even the memory of burying his wife's remains was vague. It was as if some gray fog clouded his mind, numbing each and every emotion. All that was left was a dull pain in the back of his mind. He still could not fathom what had happened. How were they found out? No bloodline hunters had been sighted on the island for years. And why now? Why did they strike when he was not at home? Why did Shiori have to die? Why wasn't he there to protect her? Mitsuo looked up, but even with the wind blowing in his face, no tears could come. He hated himself for it. Why couldn't he even cry? He wanted to rip his own eyes out, he wanted to die. What was the point of living on without his family? Anger, sadness, despair, all the emotions struggled inside him to come forth. But they all lost to that gray void that filled him. He sighed. Family. The attacker had taken Suzume away. Mitsuo did not understand why. Hunters were known to kill even babies, as they slaughtered everything that even reeked of a keke genke. Even relatives that had never manifested the ability were murdered, just to be sure. So why had that man taken his daughter? Suzume was now the only reason he still lived. She had more or less dragged him on, urging him to follow the kidnapper. He didn't know how the cat knew where to go. And frankly, he couldn't care either. Setting out on the seas with their little fishing boat was more or less suicide anyway. Mitsuha had learned sailing from his father at an early age. The paranoia had driven his father to educate Mitsuha in each and every aspect of survival. Somewhat wearily, Mitsuha remembered his father's lessons. The most urgent one at this moment was that crossing the seas in a small fishing boat like this required the sailor to be completely focused. But Mitsuha knew he was everything but focused. She looked back at the grieving man. She herself had barely recovered from the injuries she had sustained. Even though the attacker had not aimed to kill her, the sheer force of his blow had caused several internal injuries. It was a good thing that Tomio had taught her the basics of using chakra to heal herself. The only thing she regretted was that she had so little chakra. But that had both been her curse and her blessing. Her small physique had always meant she was weaker than her siblings, but it had also compelled her to learn everything she could. While her brothers and sisters had fooled around in the woods, she had read many of the scrolls her grandfather had kept, as well as many of the scrolls that Tomio had lent to her. At an early age, she had understood that she could overcome her physical limitations by outsmarting her opponents. Now, one of the many things she had learned could be put into practice. If she had not marked Suzume with her paw, she and Mitsuha would have never stood a chance of tracking the child down. At least now they knew which direction to go, provided that they hurried, she fretted to herself. She was quite aware that her sensory abilities were far beyond what was considered normal for most of her clan, even at young age. Her small reserves had at least made it easy to gain perfect control over her chakra. However, the range of her sensory abilities would still have some limitations. The kidnapper already had a head start, so any delays now would mean the child would be lost forever. Because, in this large world, how would someone retrieve a kidnapped child? Oi! Two-leg, she woke her companion. In the 4 days on sea, Mitsuha had barely slept, and eaten next to nothing. She had watched the man gradually lose his fight to stay awake. It was not a big problem, because miraculously, they never had to face any storm or bad weather. Eventually the shores in the distance had become noticeable, spurring Chi to sharply call, Mitsuha. What? The man grumbled weakly. She frowned a little when she remembered the smiling and happy man she had once known. His face radiated the weariness he felt, and his eyes, she shuddered when she saw the empty look in the man's eyes. There's land in the distance. Is Suzume there? She is in that direction, yes. Mitsuha sighed. Are you sure? Yes. I might be young, and considered weak compared to my siblings, but I do know a thing or two about tracking. When the man remained silent, she sighed. I marked your kitten with my paw. It is a mark that is untraceable by anyone other than me. You and Shiori, she saw the man grimace a little, asked me to keep an eye on Suzume, so I thought that marking her made the most sense. How long until the seal vanished? Seal. She blinked. I marked her. I do not know if it is a seal or not. A Bakeneko can mark one target. It is usually done when they have a partner, she confessed, a little embarrassed that she did something that was considered that intimate for her kind to the child. When we touch the person we want to mark, well, the easiest way to explain it is that it connects the chakras of two creatures. Though, it is true that the signal which the one chakra gives to the other weakens over the years, at least with a continuous separation between the two, yes. Chakra. But Suzume. Your kitten barely had any. Yes, but the mark doesn't really require anything from the target, she explained. Every living thing has some chakra inside it, even if the creature cannot use it. It's a mixture of physical and spiritual energy, remember. But still, we need to hurry or your kitten will be out of range. If that man takes her too far away. Right. I understand now. Mitsuha sighed, although his posture for the first time showed a little energy. She had been concerned that finding his mate's body would have broken him, but apparently there was still a bit of the old Mitsuha there. Kenta looked up and sighed. Can't even get a damned rest in this rotten place, he grumbled inwardly. After staying at sea for a few days, he had finally reached the shores of the mainland, the land of hot water, if he had the geography correct. Then after having traveled for a full day, he had seen a nice place to set up camp and to take a long overdue nap. However, he now saw over a dozen filthy-looking bandits had surrounded his position, led by one with an impressive physique. The leader and his followers were equally dirty. No, not just dirty, as the men had all painted their faces and bodies black, Kenta observed. It was not such that it bothered Kenta much. From one quick look, Kenta could see that only their leader had a little control over his chakra, while his cronies were little more than cannon fodder for a shinobi like him. Still, while casually looking at the painted men, Kenta wondered why the leader had his brown hair so well groomed. His hair was obviously long, but tied into a complex knot that fell to the side of his head. It was not the kind of haircut Kenta had ever seen before. It boggled Kenta when he noticed that the men had painted their whole bodies, yet not their hair. Suppressing a yawn, Kenta stood up. These are not the first weirdos to try and attack me, maybe I shouldn't keep my chakra suppressed all the time. Who are you shitheads, and why the fuck did you wake me up? Kenta demanded, looking at the tall leader of the little bandit group. Damn, I'm not that tiny, but this guy even towers above me, I feel like a goddamn dwarf, Kenta grumbled, as he saw that the man was at least 7 foot tall. Ah, I saw that pretty, long, black hair of yours and I thought I could finally have some fun with a woman again, the man smirked, showing Kenta a set of dirty yellow teeth. Obviously the man cared more about his hair than about his teeth. Ah well, some say pigs are hygienic too. Casually, Kenta stretched himself. He had seen enough. Apart from their leader, these goons had little to no access to chakra, and even that leader's ability seems shaky at best. No need to worry. Hardly even a reason to wake up. Still, these guys had disturbed his sleep, Kenta thought. It was enough to piss off Kenta, especially taking his previous lack of sleep into account. However, Kenta had to admit to himself that their overconfidence amused him. I don't give a damn, Kenta grunted. Get lost or I'll kill you morons. And you'd better throw your pissing insults somewhere else, or I'll cut that tongue out of your filthy mouth. The leader barked a laugh, which was quickly followed by those of his men. You got some guts there, little boy, the man nodded, as if he seriously appreciated it. I might even offer to let you join my tribe. Why on earth would I do that? Kenta frowned. Is this guy really this clueless? What a fucking moron. The Sworded Skelthus are the first tribe to go south in over a century, the leader boasted. It is a testament of our strength. No foot soldier ever stood a chance against our might. Even those puny shinobi fell to our blades. This time it was Kenta's turn to chuckle. You must never have met any real shinobi then, ever seen a jonin in combat. No, you can't have, or you and your bunch of weaklings would all have perished long ago. Hell, even a decent group of fresh genins should be able to drop a bunch of losers like you, he smirked. Agitated, one of the men close to Kenta moved forward. Though not for long, as Kenta's short sword pierced the man's throat. In a sudden cloud of mist, the jonin completely vanished from the bandit's sight. I told you to piss off, Kenta whispered, appearing behind the leader. Well, not that he led any men at this point, as his dozen of followers had become a dozen of corpses. But I guess I have to change my mind. Take me to your camp. You and your men will follow me, I'm sure my master would like some extra muscle. The bandit leader started to sweat a bit. He had seen nothing. In one moment the black-haired man had vanished without a sight or sound, by the next moment his men had fallen and he had felt a blade in his side. Instantly. Although he didn't like it, he knew when he was beaten. Fine then. I accept defeat, and you will be my chieftain, the man grunted. You can swear your loyalty to my master, not to me, Kenta said as he pulled back his blade. Now, we should hurry up. I got to bring that brat to my master. What do I call you? My name is Amor, chieftain of the Sworded Skelthus, the man replied. You defeated me, so by right, you are my leader. Ah, just shut up, you moron, Kenta grumbled. Amor, odd name. You said you came from the north. Yes, there is a shortage of food on the land I came from, so I led the warriors of my tribe down to your lands, he partially lied. Kenta saw that the man had tried to lie, but didn't really feel bothered. He guessed that the giant was too proud to admit the true reason. They did look more like criminals than soldiers anyway, so they were probably driven out and this asswipe attempted to make it look a little more heroic. And this Sworded Skelthus stuff has a meaning as well. I don't get it, what kind of fucked up language is this? Amor grimaced for a moment. It is because we paint our bodies before combat, he explained. We are the warriors of the night, are literally the black shield of our people. Tisk. Then they're screwed if they have a bunch of fucks like you to protect them. Fine then, Kenta grunted. Fetch your men and come back here. I'll pack my things. Don't try to trick me, because I can already sense them close by, all 27 of them. So, unless you want them to end up just like these fools over here. Confounded and pissed off, Amor walked back to his tribe. He was proud, but not foolish enough to ignore the fact that the puny black hair could murder the lot of them in seconds if he so wished to. Damn you, you filthy little rat. Nobody humiliates me like this. I'll get you for this, even if it is the last thing I do. After 4 days of running, taking as little rest as he could spare, Mitsuha could not remember ever being so tired. 4 days ago, he and she had set foot on land, and chased Suzume's fading mark. For the last day, Mitsuha had even carried Chi, so that the feline could conserve all her energy for tracking the mark she had placed on the child, but they were not fast enough. Chi eventually sighed. I'm sorry, I can barely sense her anymore, that man is just too fast. Feeling defeated, Mitsuha bashed the back of his head against the tree that he had slumped down against. For the first time since he had found his wife's corpse, Mitsuha cried. Silently, the tears flowed down his cheeks. His shoulders shocked. His throat burned. I lost Shiori. And now I have lost Suzume too. Why, Kami? Why? What did I do to deserve this fate? As little while later, she returned. Mitsuha had carried her, so she had gone out to hunt down some food. She saw his desperate expression, and sighed. Two-leg, there is only one method that I know of to forcibly increase my chakra, she hesitated. But it comes at a cost. Mitsuha's head jerked up, his red and teary eyes absently pointed at the cat. How? Anything. I'll do anything for my daughter. She remained silent. After little while, Mitsuha importuned, tell me, Chi, please. If there is any chance of getting my daughter back, I'll take it. I don't care if it costs me my life. It won't kill you. Two-leg, she sighed, having made up her mind. But there are several complications. What do you mean? The only way I know of to increase my reserves, and thereby to increase the range at which I can sense the chibi two-leg, is to form a contract between us. A contract? Mitsuha blinked a few times. Yes, or did you forget that my species is a summoning tribe? Forming contracts with you two-legs is what my tribe usually does, though normally only when we're a lot older. By clan law, I should be at least a century old before they would teach me how to form my own contracts. So, that's one of the things that would make this proposition dangerous. Because you don't know how. Mitsuha frowned. I know the basics, she shrugged. Otherwise I wouldn't even have mentioned it. Why would I waste our time with false hope? It's just that if I form a contract outside the laws of my clan, I truly become an outcast. A criminal, so to speak. You would break your clan's laws for me. She looked up at the surprised man. Why not? She said simply. The only one who truly cared about me died when I was swept away from the island. Any ties in blood that I still have are, well, I honestly doubt they would even miss me. I always was the failure anyway, she said with a hint of bitterness in her voice that surprised Mitsuha. The cat never spoke much of her home. I was always too small. Too weak. Too curious. Too bothersome. No, you, Shiori, and Suzume are my clan now. My family. If saving Suzume means that I have to become a criminal in the eyes of my old family, then so be it. Are you sure about this? Family. I'm sure that they care about you, She laughed, a short laugh that virtually dripped of the sarcasm it was filled with. The months that I spent with you and your family only made their lack of love for me even more obvious. No, I have made up my mind. I'm sure I'll come to regret it, especially considering the short lifespan you two legs have compared to me, but I think it is worth it. Thank you. Mitsuha bowed his head, touched that the feline would go that far for him and Suzume. You don't need to. You never wanted to accept my thanks either, she retorted with some of her cheeky attitude returning to her voice. But first I'll give you a short crash course on what my tribe can do. We don't have much time, so pay attention. Mitsuha nodded and sat down again. First of all, the primary skill my species possesses is our ability to shape-shift. Like the Henge no Jutsu. No, it isn't a cheap illusion or anything, our transformation is real. That means it also requires a lot of chakra to perform, even though the upkeep isn't that high because it is far more efficient on my chakra reserves. If we would form a contract, I could draw onto your chakra reserves, and thus I would be able to transform into a much stronger form. Mitsuha nodded, understanding the principle. And like I said, if my reserves increase, I would also be able to expand the range at which I could sense my mark on Suzume. However, Chi's whiskers moved in a way that Mitsuha had come to recognize as a sign of annoyance. There is also a downside. What do you mean? It all sounds pretty useful. True, but me drawing from your chakra means that I have to adjust to it, and it takes some time before my own reserves will expand. Like I said, I am too young to normally sign contracts. My limited reserves will mean that my body will require some time to adjust. From what I read, I anticipate that it will be a bit painful. Overloading my reserves is something that should cripple me for a while. I don't know exactly how long though. None of the scrolls ever told me anything on it, other than that it was forbidden to form contract when we were too young. But, if you use my chakra like that, would that mean that my chakra? No. She cut him off. I will draw some chakra from you, yes, but it is nothing you can't recover from. You two legs have bigger bodies and bigger reserves than I have. For me, however, it means that my body will be overloaded, and according to the terms of the contract it will forcibly expand my reserves. It will cause some pain, but a little pain is not the issue. The real issue is that it will destabilize my chakra control, and as such it will also affect your chakra control, the very moment we activate the contract. I see. You do realize that the man who took Suzume away is an excellent sensor, if he was able to pick up the chibi's chakra. Even I barely ever sensed her, and I was close, she emphasized. That trait makes it probable that he will sense us the moment our chakras bond. Because, at that moment, neither of us will be able to properly hide our signals. Then we have to move fast. She nodded, but doubted that the man, in all his desperation, understood that they were outclassed by the black-haired man that had stolen Suzume. Not to mention that the man probably moved at a speed that was casual for him, while they were moving as fast as they could and still lagged behind. Then again, the mark was nearly out of range now, so it wasn't as if they had much chance. Perhaps the man will not sense us, after all he shouldn't be expecting us to follow. And if he does sense us, there is always a chance that he would try to ambush us, but I doubt he would be able to hide from me, and if my combat abilities increase as much as the scrolls suggested, then we might be able to take him on, or at least manage to take Suzume away from him, she mused. Mitsuha will know this too. He has been on the run for most part of his life, so he will probably understand it even better than I do, well, not considering how he is still grieving for his mate. She sighed. No matter how she thought about it, they had no other choice. Not for the first time since the chase started, she wished that Tomio was still at her side. He would have known what to do. He would have been able to stop the man when he took Suzume away. Alright, put out your paw, two-leg, and place it against mine. Looking at the seemingly motley crew in front of him, Kenta couldn't help but laugh. He dropped the child that he carried over, she was tied anyway, and found himself mildly amused when he saw that she cowered away behind him, terrified by the painted men and their atrocious clothing. Apparently in the eyes of the child, these savages were even worse than he was, and for a kid so small she certainly seemed to hate him with a passion. But in front of these fools, Kenta could do nothing but laugh. And you guys wanted to face Shinobi? He panted, catching his breath. Hey, that's by far the best joke I heard in months. Absolutely fucking priceless. Any decent jonin would rape your asses in a matter of seconds. Amor gritted his teeth while the black-haired man continued his laughter. This is my tribe. Well, we'll see how useful they are, Kenta chuckled. Damn, that was a good one. Even that red hair didn't give me as much fun as these idiots, I might just keep them around to see what kind of stupidity they might pull next. Besides, the few things he heard about, and from the snake Sanin gave Kenta the idea that the man wouldn't mind a few bodies more to experiment on. The giant that led them would likely make an especially nice addition, Kenta conceded. He estimated that with his physical ability, the giant should be able to grow into a decent warrior once he properly learned how to use his chakra. Kenta wasn't going to take any risks. He would first give the group a set of coordinates of a place near the hideout where he was supposed to meet Orochimaru. As he explained this to Amor and his men, Kenta suddenly felt a spike of chakra. Now what was that? Kenta thought, narrowing his eyes. Two signals, one small, one a bit larger, perhaps Chunin level, quite distant even. And now they move in our direction again. And the small signal feels familiar. Kenta frowned a moment. I know. It's the talking cat that I met when I picked up the brat. Perhaps the other signal is the brat's father. She did keep whining about her daddy the whole freaking day well, until I gagged her fucking mouth. Damn brat. On the other hand, if those morons manage to track me, then either he or the cat is a pretty damn good sensor. Not to manage that they came this far without me noticing them, I might not want to underestimate them too much. Then again, they don't know about these painted idiots. He cocked his head a bit, and concentrated. Kenta grinned. Change of plan, he shouted. Do I only get to meet idiots today? Why would they travel at that pace when they are already exhausted? Doubt they'll even be able to cast a jutsu or two. Fucking numbskulls. Shit, he must have sensed us, she suddenly cursed. Mitsuha carried the now exhausted feline. True to her world, they had formed a simple contract, one that enabled her to drain as much of his chakra as she deemed wise, all for the goal of helping him retrieve Suzume. Where is he going? Mitsuha panted. The amount of chakra she had drawn from him, combined with his already exhausted state due to running for several days, made it extremely hard for him to keep going. If not for Suzume being in danger, Mitsuha doubted he would even have had the strength to take another step. Same direction, but it seems he picked up the pace. This in turn elicited a string of curses from Mitsuha. Are you sure about this, Chief? He gave us the coordinates, and a promise that his master would make us stronger, Amor grunted. And we all know that we need more strength. That black-haired fucker killed our comrades in mere seconds. I fucking hate to admit this, but we are too weak. But imagine us becoming as strong as that asshole. If we returned with that power, we could even best those damnable Hirthaganatos and kick that moronic Thane from his throne. This prospect drew some eager nods from his men. None of them had forgotten the defeat they had suffered at the hands of the Thane's elite. It was only logical that the Hirthaganatos were stronger, being the elite of their nation, as only the strongest and bravest warriors were allowed amongst their ranks. Still, they had not imagined that their tribe would be so much weaker, and it had cost them dearly. Half of their men had died, Amor's eldest among them, and their village was raided and enslaved. Their people faced punishment for their defiance. And the Skelthus knew they only faced execution if they remained. But with the strength they saw in Kenta, it would be possible for even a handful of them to overthrow those in power, to free their family, and to exact their revenge on the families of those that drove them out. None of the group ever dared to doubt Amor's persistence. Their leader was the former second in command of the Hirthaganatos after all. It was too bad he had annoyed his commander once too often. Well, raping the commander's daughter would probably be considered as more than just an annoyance, but still. But this guy, the one the skinny faggot was talking about, wouldn't he have the same magic? One of the men voiced his concerns. Kenta said that this guy would be weak. That he was exhausted or something. Don't ask me how he knows. How do we know he didn't just make this shit up to get rid of us? If he wanted to get rid of us, he would have killed us. Amor hated to admit it, but they had been at this man's mercy. They were completely powerless compared to the Jonin, and if he had wanted to, he would have gotten rid of them. After all, who would want to leave witnesses? We have little to lose, but far more to gain. So unless you maggots lost your guts, I say we wait till this moron comes close, slit his throat, cut his body apart, and then go the area where that asshole said we should wait. With her sore body resting in Mitsuha's strong, though exhausted arms, she had to struggle a bit to stay awake. Perhaps this was what caused her oversight. They were so fixated on chasing the man who had taken Suzume, that she never considered the possibility that he would have accomplices. Now the two stood there, surrounded by at least 24 men. If she had had the time, she would have asked what this particular kind of human was. It was black, and that color was painted on their skin, as far as she saw. It certainly didn't seem natural. It was a most curious habit, of which the cat would have loved to know more, but this was not the time for such curiosity. These two legs carried a variety of weapons, axes of all shapes and sizes, and even the long, flat slabs of metal that she once read about, called swords. It eluded her as to why the black-painted men would attack them, but again, they did not have the luxury to ask them for a reason. Mitsuha once told her that other humans attacked without reason, without any cause or aim. These men stood between them and Suzume, and much to her panic she realized that the man they were chasing had again stepped up his speed. It would just be a matter of time before he would be out of her range, and this time they would have no possible way to continue tracking her. With a short exertion, Mitsuha lashed out and tore open 4 throats with his kunai. She herself gathered all strength she could muster, preparing to fight even in her weakened condition. Mitsuha, on the other hand, tried another way out. He realized they were outnumbered, and in their exhaustion also outmatched, but these men were no shinobi. He hardly sensed any chakra, and the way the men reacted to his speed showed him that they weren't able to boost their speed either. Had Mitsuha not been so exhausted, he would have annihilated these bandits in moments, but now. Why don't you guys pull back while you still can? He tried. You are obviously no match for a shinobi, so let's avoid any further unnecessary bloodshed. To his disappointment, only laughter followed. At first it was hesitant, but after the tallest of the adversaries joined in, the others grew more confident. We already follow orders, puny man, the tall man bellowed. With a grimace, Mitsuha looked up. Damn. This guy must be at least 7 foot tall. And with those muscles, he would be a serious adversary, even with my training and chakra control. Shit. Why do I keep having this bad luck? His bad luck would not end at that. 5 men rushed forward at him, so taking a deep breath, Mitsuha again accelerated and lashed out. 3 corpses fell to the ground, and 2 men cursed and screamed as they looked at their wounds. But when Amor looked closely, he saw the worn-out expression on the man's face, and the jerky movement of the man's chest as he gasped for air. Despite the loss of his men, Amor couldn't suppress his wolfish smirk. Keep him pressured, he ordered, his smirk widening when he noticed Mitsuha's glare. Like that bastard told us, this idiot is exhausted, just keep attacking him and he'll fall. Damn, that giant isn't as dumb as he looks. And here I was hoping that scaring them off might work. Mitsuha gritted his teeth, grimacing as his body ached from pure exhaustion. He couldn't remember ever feeling this tired, not since the time those bloodline hunters had nearly caught him and his father. But that happened when Mitsuha was 8 years old. Glancing over, he saw Chi's tensed body suddenly blur and inflate. Only for it to disappear in a flash of black and white, lunging at the throat of the nearest of their assailants. Even Amor grimaced when he saw the suddenly abnormally large cat claw at the man's face and throat. The victim's screams made him shiver, and he knew that he wouldn't soon forget the sight of the eyeball that was halfway torn out of the man's skull, only for it to remain attached to a few muscles and nerves. Chi, on the other hand, didn't give herself the time to think about what she did. All that mattered to her was to eliminate the threat, the obstacle to their rescuing the little pink-haired girl that she had learned to love, the first 2 legs she ever laid eyes on. No one would keep her away from the child. And these last days of horror had only added to the rage the feline felt and now unleashed upon this filthy-looking group of 2 legs. There was rage due to Shiori's death, rage due to being so helpless, rage due to feeling her opponent getting away while they were stalled here. Adding to her fury was the knowledge that Mitsuha would not last much longer. She saw him dodge one strike after another, but he already had various gashes on his body, and his dwindling speed made her fear the worst. She herself would not be able to fight that much longer either. She knew her chakra reserves were sinking fast, especially after her transformation into the 4-foot-long cat that now tore down another man. But each time she came close to her partner, another of the black-painted 2 legs stepped in and forced her to back away. They had not managed to hit her yet, but she knew all too well that her own speed was dwindling too. Each new opponent she focused on took longer to eliminate. Distracted by the large axe a man swung at her, she failed to note the leader had circled behind Mitsuha. But after Chi rushed past the muscular arm that held the axe, and tore a nasty wound in the man's neck, tearing the flesh out of him with her teeth, she froze at what she saw. Sitting on his knees, Surrounded by several corpses, Mitsuo looked down at the point of the blade stuck out of his chest. Amor laughed, bloodlust filling his mind, as he pulled his blade from his opponent's back. These people, even when completely exhausted, can cause us losses like this, the tall man realized. Ha! Exacting my revenge will be all too easy once that bastard gives me what he promised. No one would ever get the chance to stop me ever again. So engrossed by having dealt the mortal blow, Amor never heard the cry that she had let out when she desperately rushed forward. Blinking, the giant man could only lift up his blade to force the monstrous feline back, but not before receiving 4 long cuts on his chest. These 4 long scars he would never talk about to anyone else. After all, what kind of warrior would not feel ashamed by being wounded by a mere cat, no matter how strange the cat was? Stumbling back, eyes narrowed from the painful surprise, Amor saw the feline circling around his fallen foe. Though he could see the man had yet to die, his fate was inevitable. Amor knew enough about the human body to realize that even if he had missed the heart itself, the wound itself was far beyond healing. The final wound was compounded by the added blood loss from all the other wounds the man had gotten during the short battle. Enough, Amor signaled his remaining men. He grimaced a little when he saw he had lost another 11 of his tribe, with another 6 being wounded. Our target is already dead, even if he is too stupid to realize it yet. Get back, and take our wounded away from that demonic cat monster. Smirking to himself, Kenta looked down at the unconscious pink-haired child he carried underneath his arm. No more daddy for you, you filthy blood-cursed freak, he said happily, not that she would hear or even understand him. The signal he felt vanishing at this distance only meant one thing. Perhaps I should tell Orochimaru about the location. In hindsight I should have ordered those morons to bring the corpse with them, Kenta mumbled to himself, slightly annoyed by his own oversight. Ah well, if that snake wants to examine the corpse I could always retrieve it. I hope those fuckheads don't mess up the corpse too much though. Breathing was hard. So hard. And what is that? That water running down my body. It is so warm. Cold, why am I so cold? Mitsuo exerted himself, drawing out all the power he had left to force himself to wake up. Stay still. Mitsuo heard his partner's voice. Where were they? Why does she sound so concerned? Ah. The ambush. Mitsuo muttered. Are you, alright? I'm fine. Don't worry. Again her concern filled him with wonder. Why did she talk like that? Last time she had that strange tone in her voice was when she found me sitting next to Shiori's. Slowly opening his eyes, Mitsuo understood the reason of her despair. The warm liquid flowing down was not water. It did not rain. My pocket. The scroll, take it. 2-leg, you shouldn't. I'm alright, Mitsuo smiled weakly. He didn't understand it, but what was that familiar feeling? I know, death, the scroll, my diary, pictures, take it, give it, rescue, Suzume, he coughed, and somewhere in the back of his mind he realized that his left lung didn't function. He coughed up blood. But Mitsuo didn't care any longer. I've been running away for so long. I wish I could have lived with Shiori and Suzume for just a bit longer. I wish I could have seen my little angel just one more time. Tears flowed down from his eyes, and Mitsuo felt the strange cold sensation spread through his body. Yet, he still had that strange feeling, as if someone was close. There was a smell, it was so familiar, it made him think of home, of the peaceful years, of the nights he would just lie next to the woman that had stolen his heart, of those loving eyes that stared down at him when they. As he felt his body grow numb, Mitsuo's smile widened as he realized who it was that got so close to him. He was home again. Surrounded by the deep darkness of the forest at night, she sighed deeply. How many years had gone by since the man she had formed a contract with had died? 10, 12. She could barely remember. She looked down at the small pouch that she had put at the back of the burrow she moved into last winter. She knew that the scribbles and images of the 2-leg were in there. She knew she had missed him, and his family. But after all these years, she only felt empty and bitter. She still remembered dragging away and hiding the corpse of the man she had formed a contract with, as clearly as if she had done it the day before. She still remembered when she realized the contract would not end with his death, but only when the child, Suzume, would be freed. And even to this day, she knew the child was alive, as the contract was still in place. But no matter where she had gone, she never sensed even the faintest trace of the mark she placed on the child. Until one day, she had grown tired of it. Yes, the marking would last long, although they had been separated for years, but its signal would have diminished by now. Besides, after all these years, what could she still do for the child? She wouldn't know Suzume anymore, nor would Suzume even remember Chi. At first, it had hurt her to acknowledge that she had failed to fulfill Mitsua's final request, but over the years that pain gone turned into a dull ache, and then into the faint memory and frustration that it was right now. But who could blame her for giving up, apart from herself? She could still remember the sunshine-filled day with the family of humans she once loved, the family that made her laugh, the warmth and happiness. The laughter of the child, hugging her, chasing her to catch her tail. Perhaps these humans were, apart from her teacher, the only beings she really ever cared about. Over the following years, she had seen so many humans, but each one seemed even more worthless, selfish, and disgusting than the other. In addition, the animals she encountered were all ignorant and savage, nothing like herself. Those sunshine-filled days were long behind her. The people she cared about were either dead or missing without a trace. All clues she ever had found led to nothing. Nowhere did she see the black-haired man that kidnapped Suzume. Nowhere did she see the painted men who had ambushed her and Mitsua. Nothing. All hope she once held had vanished like smoke in the wind. Like she had feared all those years ago, the moment that the man had moved the child out of her range, Suzume had been lost forever. She sighed, exhausted in body and mind. Survival in the wild area she now lived in required her to transform into her full-grown, 5-foot-long form, and keeping that up eventually strained her. It was especially concerning now that there were some dumb two-legs hunting her. Again, she didn't bother to count the times shinobi had tried to find her. They had never been successful. The two legs were too stupid to ever find her, and it was meaningless. They were too stupid to find even a single trace. Not that any of it mattered. She was an outcast to her clan, and on top of it she had broken her oath, after her summoner had died and left her stranded in this horrible place. Perhaps death wasn't such a bad option, she pondered. She had always wondered if there would be a life after death, and the only way to satisfy her curiosity would be to find something willing to kill her. It would not be difficult in this region. In that state of mind, she buried the pouch containing the memories of her lost family. She then said her goodbyes and moved out of the burrow and slowly stepped into the night. She took a deep breath and calmed herself, noticing that for the first in a long time she felt a bit excited. The massive and malicious chakra that was approaching would be her final opponent. She was tired of life. Whether that demonic presence would kill her or not, she hardly cared anymore. Perhaps having one last fight would be amusing. The only thing that really kept bugging her was that she wanted to know more about the thing that would end her life. How could anything feel so foul and massive? She had never even felt anything that came close to this presence. And then she saw a short, blonde human boy walk forward, talking to what smelled like a toad. A boy, with a toad summon. Now that is interesting, the black and white cat mused. Hush, she heard the human whisper. Something is near. And it seems unusual to me, not a regular animal at least. Can you figure out what kind of creature it is? Smart, for a two-leg. But this is the creature that radiates that foul chakra. This form must just be disguised to fool the other two legs. Perhaps designed to catch its opponent off guard. Things are getting even more interesting now, she smirked to herself. Well, time to show myself, I suppose. She hopped down, drawing the creature's attention. And to either end my story or to begin a new one. Chapter 38. Promotions. The previous chapter ended the Chi Chronicles, so here is a little summary of where we left at chapter 34. During the final round of the Chunin exams, Orochimaru launched an attack on Konoha. His village, Otogakure, was joined by Sunagakure, after its Kazekage had been deceived by Orochimaru's partner Sasori. However, the invasion failed, as Naruto stopped Gaara from unleashing Shukaku and wreaking havoc in the middle of Konoha, and Sasori and Orochimaru were stopped as well. Sasori fell at the hands of Yugito, as the Jinchuriki of the Nibi was enraged by the Akatsuki's attempt to capture her younger brothers. Orochimaru managed to poison the Hokage before he was chased away by Jiraiya. Also, in an attempt to get his hands on another Dujutsu, Orochimaru sent out Kabuto to kidnap Hinata. Haruki managed to prevent this, though at the cost of his own life. With Orochimaru fleeing the field, leaving behind his grunts to be slaughtered, Tsunagaku surrendered. Suna's temporary leader, Baki, saw the snake Sanin murdering his Kazekage, and realized they were betrayed. The Kazecage's corpse and his children were left behind in Konoha, when Suna departed, as part of the truce negotiated by Baki and Jiraiya. Kohoa's successful resistance nonetheless left the Hyuga clan in turmoil, as it was evident that Hizashi had broken their clan's laws by teaching his son forbidden techniques, and Hinata found out that people from her own clan had attempted to kill her, attempts that were stopped by Naruto. Chunin Arc. Promotions. Several days after the burial of Hyuga Haruki, the Konoha Council came together. Also invited were the 4 Jonin sensei whose students had reached the later stages of the exam. In addition, the Jonin commander Nara Shikaku, and most of the other clan heads were present. It was an important meeting because the topic was to decide which genin had earned promotion for their actions throughout the Chunin exams and during the following invasion. Not fully trusting his counselors to make the right decisions, the Hokage had postponed this meeting in order to be there in person. Sarutobi Hiruzen had weakened significantly due to the poisonous attack from his former student, but with the help of Tsunade and Naruto he at least managed to recover in part. In all honesty, Hiruzen had to admit to himself that a noble death in battle would have been nicer, but he was a shinobi down to the very core. To his last breath, he would do his duty. Glory was not something a shinobi should pursue. Their profession was not about glory and heroics, but doing what needed to be done from the shadows. However, he somehow never really managed to get that aspect of his profession into Jiraiya's head, Sarutobi noted. Then again, even as a boy Jiraiya had always been a dreamer, in contrast to the practical mentality Hiruzen had himself. Maybe that mentality prevented him from collapsing like Tsunade did, Hiruzen mused as he was walked into the room, flanked by Jiraiya and Tsunade. When the old Hokage found that despite his expressed wishes, the meeting had already, unofficially started, a deep frown settled on Hiruzen's old and tired face. Led by the 3 elders, Mitokado Homura, Shimura Danzo, and Udatane Kaharu, the clan heads were already in a heated discussion regarding the validity of the exam. I expected this to happen. I haven't even properly drawn my last breath and they are already fighting for power, and Tsunade wondered why I refused to tell them that I am dying. But the exam was interrupted, therefore any results should not be valid, Danzo urged. Hiruzen coughed, making his entry known to his 3 former teammates. Since they had seats facing away from the door Hiruzen had used to enter, since he came from his own office, they had not seen him. After all, the elders were supposed to be the Hokage's most trusted, the ones who knew each other well enough to show each other their backs without hesitation. How long has it been since we were just team members? When did we lose the unconditional trust we had in each other? Not long after Tobirama-sensei died, I think. Hiruzen tried, and failed, to suppress a chuckle when 2 of the 3 froze in their seats. Then again, Danzo always seemed frozen, so he didn't really count. I suppose this saves me the trouble of starting this meeting, even though I would have preferred it if you 3 had waited until the moment this meeting was actually supposed to start. But enough of that. I think we have seen enough to at least consider whether a few notable genin deserve promotion, Hiruzen said dryly as he took his seat. I'd say that the interruption of this exam did not give any of the genin a real disadvantage. I agree, Aburame Shibi, who represented his clan, argued. All of the candidates had participated, with the exception of the one contestant who withdrew, and his opponent. Still, Tsunagaku clearly sent in 3 genin who were far above the level of what ordinary genin should be. Their fights should not be. Yamanaka Inoichi started. TCH, you're just sour because your daughter lost, Shikaku chuckled, earning him a sharp look from his old friend. Kurigakure did also send one of the new generation of their 7 swordsmen, not to mention that boy with the Hyoten bloodline. Those pups were rather unusually skilled this time, the Inuzuka elder said. Small wonder that amidst that carnage, most of our youngsters hardly did anything noticeable. With one exception, Shikaku countered. The boy surely made a lot of progress, especially considering his, well, let's call it a handicap. The Kyuubi brat has only proven to me that he lacks the control to be allowed to walk freely around in this village, Danzo grumbled. That remark earned him a surprised look from Hiruzen, who gestured to the annoyed Jiraiya to stand down before doing anything foolish. I'm afraid you let your prejudice get the better of you, Danzo. Again, Hiruzen sighed. Uzumaki Naruto did the opposite of losing control. No matter how much he was incited by the actions of Hyuga Neji, he did not lose control of the Kyuubi for a moment. Similarly, no matter how hard the Jinchuriki from Tsunagakure pushed him, Naruto never lost control. In the contrary, Naruto even showed us how he could use the chakra from the Kyuubi to defeat the Ikibi, that he is in control, rather than the other way around. In my opinion, he proved his worth, and certainly showed that he is worthy of a promotion to Chunin. After all, Naruto did something that none of the previous Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi managed to do. Something of which I suspect Minato had his hand in, before his untimely death. Against this, Danzo could not protest, not when the majority of the clan heads seemed to be agreeing. His only hope was the civilian representative, but that man could only bring forth his fear for the demon itself. As a last resort, Danzo turned to the Jonin sensei present. We have both a former sensei and a current sensei of the Uzumaki amongst us, Koharu spoke up, after a signal from Danzo. Let them give their opinions about the boy, before we put the matter to a vote. Hatake Kakashi. The Jonin stood up and bowed his head slightly to acknowledge all the members of the council. I have only seen Naruto for a few months, and I have seen his growth, Kakashi said, seemingly uninterested as always. Uzumaki Naruto is the most surprising shinobi I know, a fact that he has proven from the very first day I met him, and he reminded everyone of how Naruto had managed to succeed in the usually impossible test. Kakashi doubted that any rumor had been spread faster through the village than that one, though he still did not know who had leaked that little piece of information not that Hiruzen would tell. His potential, both in skill and chakra capacity, is likely far beyond my own, yet his burdens are also great. But it is the way Uzumaki Naruto deals with those burdens that impressed me the most. He has a remarkable spirit, and never gives up on anything. I understand that people fear the demon, but those that would take the time and give Naruto a chance will see the truth. The last comment certainly caused a lot of murmuring. Not surprisingly either, considering how Kakashi was known as one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Jonin of Konoha. The other being Guy, but people always had trouble of giving that man the respect he actually deserved. And if a man of this caliber praised someone to this extent. I fully agree, Kurenai continued before Koharu could speak up again. Though, I must say that Uzumaki Naruto has suffered more from the prejudice caused by the Kyuubi, than from issues with the demon itself. Naruto has shown several times that he capable of things most people can only dream of, yet he has never once shown that he could be corrupted by that power. Some of the genin I have witnessed during the exam were overly confident in their own power, and would likely sacrifice anything to gain a power like he has, but would only be corrupted by it. Uzumaki Naruto is my student, and I have the utmost confidence in him. Not just as a shinobi, nor as a Jinchuriki, but as a human. Has the Uzumaki child ever shown power like we witnessed during his fight with Sabaku no Gaara? Homura questioned. Did he ever lose control? But neither of the Jonin could tell the old counselors what they wanted to hear, so Hiruzen added finally. Well, I am certainly glad Naruto made good use of the demon's power, or I would not be around today. And I have little doubt that many more would have died during the invasion. Without the intervention of Uzumaki Naruto, the unleashed Ikibi would have been turned against our village, Shikaku spoke up to silence the murmur in the hall. Upon investigation of the shinobi we captured from Otogakure, we discovered most of Orochimaru's plan. Though I think that this plan should be described by the one responsible for uncovering most of the information, he gestured to Jiraiya. The strategy of Orochimaru consisted of 3 parts, Jiraiya explained when all faces turned towards him. First, with the aid of the snakes summoned by specialists from Otogakure, shinobi from Tsunagakure and Otogakure were to have flooded through breaches in our walls. Second, Orochimaru had planned to use the Kazekage to steer the unleashed Ikibi, and to cause enough chaos and destruction so that our troops on the walls could not be reinforced. Third, he planned to assassinate the Hokage, thereby crippling the leadership of Konoha, and creating further chaos. Jiraiya did not add the fourth point, that Orochimaru's partner was supposed to capture Naruto, and most likely Gaara too. Over the years, Jiraiya had heard several worrisome things about the Akatsuki organization that his former friend and teammate had joined, but that Akatsuki would be after the Jinchuriki was something he had yet to fully comprehend. As much of this was as yet unconfirmed, Hiruzen had agreed that as long as they had no more information on them, the details about Akatsuki would remain classified. Only those who had seen and heard Sasori knew a little about this, and they all had received their gag order on the subject. In short, Uzumaki Naruto prevented the second part of Orochimaru's plan from happening, as well as aided in stopping the third, Hiruzen continued with a clear voice. He risked his own life to save Konoha, showed remarkable strength and intelligence, and as far as I'm concerned, a promotion is the least Naruto deserves for his heroics. If you do not want to promote him because of a technicality, that his match against Gaara was outside the bound of the exam, then I will be forced to issue a field promotion. Danzo gritted his teeth when he saw the vast majority vote in favor of a promotion for Naruto, especially now that many now came to realize the full extent of what Naruto had done for Konohagakure. In contrast, Jiraiya and Kurenai both smiled widely, as both felt proud that the boy finally gained some of the recognition he deserved. Even Kakashi, in his own stoic way, silently cheered for his former student, and his teacher's son. Looks like I have to deal with the demon in another way, Danzo thought, prompting the assembled to switch to another subject. Let us continue with the other candidates. The last of the Uchiha clan performed rather well during the first rounds as well as in the preliminaries, but had the bad luck to draw the Hyoden user during the finals. His mastery of the Chidori was certainly unexpected, Shikaku agreed. However, his tactical insight certainly has a lot of room for improvement. From what I heard, the Uchiha had faced this Haku before, did he not, Kakashi? Kakashi nodded. We met Haku and his sensei, Momochi Zabuza, while on a mission in the country of waves, he explained to the others. They were still missing Nin at that point, having rebelled against the previous Mizukage, much like the current Mizukage. At that time, Haku defeated Sasuke with relative ease. So he knew what he was up against but still charged right at him. Shikaku frowned. Not quite the mindset I would expect from a Chunin, especially not from an Uchiha. After all, their clan's shinobi usually excelled in analytical abilities, exploiting every opportunity to use their Sharingan to gather new skills. Even if I take the age of those kids into account, I know it is unrealistic to expect great leadership skills, as they still lack experience, but still, if they do not have the tactical prowess to understand their position, or at the very least show a certain amount of potential in that account, he trailed off. True, the performance of the Uchiha seemed to be based upon the notion of brute strength, Inoichi agreed with his friend. That is how he tried to overcome a much faster enemy. I must admit I was quite disappointed to see him lose like that. I expected the boy to have a lot of potential, especially after all the stories had I heard. He didn't add that many of these stories came from his daughter, who wasn't exactly impartial when it came to the last Uchiha. Hiruzen had no intention of revealing that Sasuke was burdened with the curse seal from Orochimaru, but it was another thing which made him think that the young Uchiha should not be promoted. Not yet, at least. Unlike Naruto, Sasuke had yet to prove that he could either contain such a vile power, or use it wisely when having no other options. Hiruzen realized that he had already worked out his opinion regarding the Uchiha. I am afraid I cannot allow a possible promotion of Uchiha Sasuke, he spoke up, when some of the heads started to argue why Sasuke should be promoted. What? Some exclaimed. Why? Several more voices protested. Hiruzen sighed. Why can't they look beyond the blood? The Uchiha Keke Genkai surely is a powerful asset, but it does not necessarily mean that the boy is a good shinobi. Uchiha Sasuke is the last of his line. Well, the last of his line who is still in Konoha, Hiruzen said, cutting off any further protest. I cannot allow him to be promoted. In the best interest of Konohagakure, Uchiha Sasuke should live and grow old enough to at least make sure he continues his bloodline. As long as there is still doubt regarding Sasuke's mental and physical abilities, I cannot allow him to be promoted and thereby allow him to face even greater risks. Konoha cannot afford to lose the entire Uchiha bloodline. Under the current situation, I would only recommend Sasuke's promotion when I would be certain that he would not face an unreasonably high risk to die. Konoha cannot afford to lose the Sharingan. If it is about risk, couldn't we just, well, gather his genetic material, as a backup? The Inuzuka elder suggested. Hiyashi was not one to show much emotion, but this made him frown deeply. Artificial insemination. He grumbled. Surely you know of the risks of that regarding Kekkei Genkai. Allow me to explain. Aburame Shibi spoke up. Though the process is already complex, even with a medic as skilled as Tsunade-sama, there are too many risks when a Kekkei Genkai is involved. Why? Because the delicate balance of chakra within the genetic material is easily disrupted. In the regular reproduction process, this already involves a chance where the offspring will not inherit the bloodline abilities of the parents, but the chances of success are even lower using artificial means. It is only to be used as a last resort, Hiruzen agreed. For now, the value of the Uchiha blood outweighs the risks of having Sasuke promoted. Not even considering whether he even deserves the promotion or not. He knew very well that this was a touchy subject to many clans, and any form of research into the matter in order to increase the odds of success were always opposed by the clans. Not that the Inuzuka felt bothered by this. Their bond with their ninkin was not relying on blood, so even if many of their skills were indeed depending on genetic factors, such as their improved senses, the Inuzuka were the clan who was least dependent on blood ties. Ironic, considering that the Inuzuka were also the ones who valued family the most. But of all the clans, they were the ones with the least issues regarding the topic of adoption. Nor with other forms of reproduction. Well, they wouldn't treat humans any differently than they do their dogs, so it does make sense. But we cannot let the fate of the Uchiha clan depend on such a risky procedure. Again, a majority agreed with their Hokage, and again, Shimura Danzo was left disappointed. In his eyes, Naruto was the one who should have been kept at a short leash, as the Kyuubi was a dangerous but nevertheless a very valuable weapon for Konoha. In contrast, he thought it would be much wiser to eliminate the last Uchiha, as that clan only posed a risk to Konoha. Their power combined with their questionable loyalty had always been a thorn in Danzo's eye. But he knew very well that Uchiha Sasuke could not be eliminated by him. Not in Konoha. No. A death while on a dangerous mission would be far easier to explain, Danzo ruminated. And Danzo had yet to forget the threat Uchiha Itachi had made before he left Konohagakure. None of the elders would forget. And Danzo did not feel ready to risk a confrontation with the infamous Uchiha yet. From what I have seen, there is still one more genin who we should discuss. The Nara boy has also shown capacity that is worthy of a promotion, Hiruzen spoke up. Because of his actions, Naruto was able to breach the barrier that separated me from my reinforcements. Nara Shikamaru showed much promise in the earlier 2 rounds too, where his intelligence and skill ensured that his team progressed through the stages. It is also highly impressive that he managed to trick and defeat one of the new generation of Kiri's swordsmen. Shikaku frowned, pleasantly surprised to hear his son getting such a recommendation from the Hokage. Not to mention that Yoshino would be overjoyed when she would hear that their son had been promoted at this age. However, there was little doubt regarding his son's response to talk of a promotion. He would either find the whole thing troublesome, or he would lazily remark that it saved him the effort of taking another exam. Still, 2 rookies getting all the way through the exam and earning their promotions was something that hardly ever happened. Even if one of the 2 was a Jinchuriki, it was still against all logic. It made Shikaku all the more proud of his son, not that he would tell him. The moment Shikamaru learned that he did good, he would put in even less effort. Shikaku guiltily admitted to himself that he could not blame him. Yoshino never failed to rub it in that Shikamaru got that trait from him. Troublesome women. On the other hand, Shikaku smiled at the thought that his son needed extra attention with training now. Few things were more enjoyable than relaxing while others worked their asses off. Tsunade frowned as her green glowing hands moved around to inspect her old sensei. You should have called a break, be a bit more reasonable, she scolded him. If you keep overexerting yourself like this. You know as well as I do that these matters had to be discussed as soon as possible, Hiruzen sighed. Jiraiya could only defend his sensei. It was a shock to the council when they heard that he and Hiruzen had accepted the official apologies from Sunagakure, in which Suna openly admitted that the cage had been controlled by one of Orochimaru's henchmen. For a village, this was probably the greatest disgrace they could face. And publicly, on top of it all. Normally, it would be as likely to happen as a blushing Danzo, but in this case. Suna had attacked Konoha, and in the process Kurigakure and Kumogakure had gotten involved too. If Suna did not go all out in an attempt to fix things, it could potentially face a war with three nations at once. And knowing the reputation of Iwagakure, Suna would have to watch their northern borders as well. Sunagakure had no other choice than to swallow its pride and grovel in shame. And beyond those concessions, Jiraiya had even got Baki's agreement on a collateral. In order to ensure that Sunagakure would not betray them, Konohagakure would, for the time being, retain the body of the deceased Kazekage, as well as his children, as hostages. Of course they had not shared with the council that Jiraiya had explained to Baki that the sealing on Gaara had been vastly improved, and that Naruto would help to improve Gaara's seal even further, minimizing the future danger of the Ikibi's rampages. Furthermore, it had been agreed that the siblings would not have to remain in their cells, but would soon move to a secure place within Konoha. As a safeguard, Jiraiya had arranged that either he or Naruto would remain as Gaara's guards, until the new formal peace treaty, featuring the improved trade conditions for Konoha, was signed. A smile crept across Jiraiya's face as he remembered Baki's look when the Sand Nin had realized that Konoha would effectively give Sunagakure a super soldier that would potentially double Suna's power. After all, the Ikibi was considered to be undefeatable when able to take advantage of the vast deserts surrounding their village. Baki had thanked Jiraiya for this, telling him that this would make it much easier to convince the council in Suna to agree with the terms. And the same had turned out to be true for Konoha's council, which had reluctantly agreed, as no one could go against Jiraiya on this, especially because Naruto had proven strong enough to fight the Ikibi on his own. The second treaty that they presented had created even more chaos in the council, Jiraiya recalled, nearly causing a heart attack or two among some of the elder members. Even Danzo's visible eye had twitched significantly, something even Jiraiya, who had the habit of trying to sell his Ika Ika series to Danzo with every new release, did not see very often. The conventional wisdom was that Kurigakure had a long history of treason, so how could they accept a treaty between Kurigakure and Konohagakure? They would have taken me to a mental institution if no one had witnessed the actions of the new Mizukage. The way that she and her detail had aided in the defense of Konoha had left a strong impression, and certainly helped in getting this proposition to pass. The trade interests came in a close second place though. Greed made it easier for people to forget past transgressions. Jiraiya sighed when he heard Tsunade squabble more about the old man's health. They all knew that Hiruzen had more or less a month before the poison would get the upper hand and end his life. Even the antidote that Tsunade had derived from Naruto's blood could not help him live much longer. While Naruto already was immune to most poisons due to the Kyuubi's influence, the antibodies he had created after being poisoned by Orochimaru only broke down the poison to a level that was tolerable to him. However, what was tolerable to Uzumaki Naruto would still kill most others. Intrigued by the ramifications, Jiraiya grinned at the idea of trying to get Naruto drunk. He would never pay for that if the boy could resist such poisons. There was little doubt that it would take a very serious amount of alcohol to get Naruto floored. Jiraiya stored the thought for future use. Perhaps he would goad Tsunade into a drinking contest with the boy. With the debts she had already gathered, she wouldn't mind a little more. But for the meantime, Hiruzen's condition depended upon Tsunade's ability to create an antidote to the poison that Orochimaru had used against him. It had proven to be virtually impossible. While the poison was similar to the poison used against Naruto, the latter had been less potent. Apparently, Orochimaru had kept this specific poison for special occasions. Apart from that, all three knew that Hiruzen was old, and that his body would not last that much longer even in the unlikely event that Tsunade found a cure. The damage was already done. All they could do now was to prevent the old man to suffer too much. It was a good thing that the partial antidote based on Naruto's blood at least minimized Hiruzen's pain and allowed the man to do his work to some degree. Jiraiya already dreaded the headaches and chaos that he imagined would hit Konoha once Hiruzen announced his plans to step down again. Last time, Minato had been the perfect successor, but this time there was no shinobi that stood out enough. Jiraiya had wanted to wait a bit longer before taking Naruto away from Konoha for training, but with the way he felt now, Jiraiya intended to leave Konoha the first moment he could. Especially with the likelihood that Danzo aimed for the position of Hokage. If the old war hawk managed to get that, Naruto would probably be forbidden to leave Konoha. Damn politicians, Jiraiya sputtered to himself. Perhaps Tsunade is really right in that only idiots would want to deal with this crap. Neji and Hizashi found themselves confined to their individual rooms at the Hyuga compound, imprisoned and awaiting the judgment of the elders of their clan, waiting for Hiyashi to punish his brother for the blatant transgression of their clan's laws, a fate even Hizashi knew he had brought upon himself. Neji had first spent several days at the hospital. The wounds on his chest had recovered pretty well, but because the open wounds had been burned, it had resulted in 4 long and hideous scars. The medics had attempted to restore the skin as well as they could, and had promised that the scars would diminish over time, but Neji knew that they would never completely vanish. But compared to the pain that those 4 scars cause him, his forehead was likely far worse. Naruto had likely burned away his seal, and most of his skin along with it. The doctors were forced to transplant new skin to his forehead, because the wounds were too bad to be healed with regular methods. Neji had not seen the results of that procedure yet, as his head remained covered in bandages all of the time. But the looks from his caretakers, guards when changing his bandages had been enough for him. Neji knew his body had suffered as much as his pride. How could I ever think I could oppose Naruto? I don't know what he is, but he is not human, Neji pondered, still trying to figure out how he had lost. How was it possible that someone could reopen his tenketsu, even when they were all closed? All of them. No chakra storage seal should have been sufficient to do that, and that left aside the puzzle that someone, not of Hyuga blood, could reopen an individual tenketsu. The few within his own clan who could do such a thing had to possess remarkable chakra control and noticeable strength. Unless his chakra is insanely strong. If that's the case, his tenketsu must be extremely strong to support such strength. Could he have just forced so much chakra through them that they reopened, without having his tenketsu break from the strain? Neji mused. It might have been a possibility, Neji conceded, although he would have probably still thought that it was impossible if he had not seen Naruto's power, that one moment if he had not seen those crimson eyes, and that seemingly limitless amount of chakra. Those eyes, as if I was looking into a bottomless pit of chakra. What on earth was that? In his dreams following the exam, while delirious from the fevers, those eyes had kept looking down on him. Haunting him. I owe Hinata-sama my life and my freedom. Why did he say that? What did he mean with that? Before, he would have discarded those words as nonsense. But Neji now knew that Naruto had been the one behind the disappearances and murders within their clan. But why? Normally, the only logical conclusion that Neji could reach was that those people had been threatening Naruto. But now, he recognized that Naruto would not do that against someone who tried to take his life. But if they were after Hinata, Neji now understood that Naruto only became merciless when he defended others. Neji had seen how the blonde had fought Lee. He had heard how he had spared Gaara, even though the medics and the guards refused to share any details of the event. But when Naruto fought for the sake of someone else, Neji had merely received mercy because Hinata had axe. No, because she had begged Naruto to spare his life. Why would someone of the main family humiliate herself like that? But Neji knew, despite her birthright, Hinata was not like any of the main family. But what did it say about Naruto's behavior? If his assumption was true, then Naruto had killed all those people because of someone else. Because of Hinata. Why would all those people have been after Hinata's life? Neji wondered, especially because most of the people who had been murdered came from the main family itself. Some of them even had possessed high-ranked seats within their clan. What could have been the reason for them to be after Hinata's life? He had always heard his father complain about decadence of the main family, about how the branch was cursed by them, and had to suffer the main branch's abuse. Hizashi had even claimed that the branch would gain more support if Neji had beaten Hinata. But when Naruto had stepped in, Hizashi had claimed that the blonde needed to be beaten as well, because he had acted as a champion of the main house. The world needed to see that the main family was not as powerful as they pretended to be, his father had explained to him. More than anything, the world needed to know about the crimes they committed against the branch family. Neji began to doubt his father's words now. Hinata had always been considered weak, both in her ability, which had always been below expectation, to the point where even her younger sister could fight her equally, and in her mental strength. An heir of the Hyuga clan could not be that gentle. But it was that gentleness that had saved me, he marveled. Neji had beaten her so badly, and still she had it in her to forgive him. Why? Was that weakness? Neji didn't think so. Then, it dawned on him. That gentleness, if she was to become head of the clan, Neji suddenly made a projection of how her rule would be, based on what he knew about her. If she could forgive him, a person who had been willing to kill her, then she would not allow the continued abuse of the branch either. If she stopped that tradition, then many of the most powerful in the main family would lose much of their wealth and power. That was the threat they wanted to get rid of, before she could come of age and ruin the wealthy position of the main house. Moreover, if Naruto had somehow found out, he would not have remained passive, which would explain his involvement. Neji could not claim to understood why, but the fierce loyalty of the blonde toward his cousin was, to him, beyond discussion. Neji knew it was a crazy idea. But if it was real, and what other reason could anyone from the main family have to target her? Why did the branch help them? If that would be true, why didn't father tell me? He wondered. He always talks about plight of the branch family. But if I am right, why didn't we support Hinata-sama? Why did father even scold me for not killing her? Unless. For days, Hisashi had been imprisoned in his room, only a short distance from his son. His guards hardly told him anything about what had happened outside, nor anything about Neji's condition. Hisashi had seen his son's wounds, and couldn't help but feel worried. He grimaced when he thought back to how his own brother had turned against him, how Hisashi had ordered his imprisonment, as soon as he saw his brother. Because of that order, Hisashi had been confined ever since the invasion. But the plans had failed. Neji had fought admirably, but the demon boy was too strong. It was like many had feared. The boy himself was a monster as well. Even Neji's mastery of the famed Hokage Rokujuin Sho, the 64 palms, had not been enough to defeat the demon child. Hisashi couldn't even describe the pride he felt that his son had achieved the impossible by mastering a technique like that, without anyone to instruct him. Even Hisashi himself had failed to master the technique, despite the number of times he had seen his brother do it, or the times when he had peeked in on their father training Hisashi. Even with that incomplete information that he had passed down, Neji had managed to pull it off. His son was a genius, proving the system wrong about the power of blood. In addition, from what Hisashi had heard from the audience, people had thought that the fight itself had never been fair. That unfairness simply was another illustration of the unfairness the branch always had to face. So, even though his son had failed to defeat his opponent, he still had proven his power, and fought bravely for the branch's cause, Hisashi rationalized. So, the bigger failure was that, despite his arrangements, Otogakur had failed to capture his niece. Hisashi felt troubled that he had failed to comply with the orders given to him, but it was hardly his fault, was it? He had ensured that the girl would sit apart from the rest of the clan, that she would be without any notable guards. His sister-in-law never suspected a thing. Only her teammates, a maid, and some cripple were near her. Orochimaru would have certainly sent a trustworthy minion when the Byakugan was within his reach, so what could have gone wrong? It had been the perfect opportunity to cripple Hiyashi's family even more. It was not that he had anything against the girl, but Hisashi knew he had to follow his orders. He believed that, even though it would be hard to follow them, those orders would only improve the position of the branch. My first responsibility is to the branch. But still, I failed to follow orders. I failed. Failed, echoed through Hisashi's mind. Must never fail again. Never. Avenge. Hisashi knew all too well that his master would never allow a second failure, if Hisashi even survived his first. Despite all that had happened recently in Konoha, there were still little things that gave life a bit of color. Upon his return from the council meeting, Hisashi informed his wife about the news, and asked her to tell Naruto, as he himself would be busy. The chaos that had followed after the invasion had buried each and every clan head in paperwork, not to mention the Hokage himself. Last that Hisashi had seen, the old man's desk was barely visible. Jiraiya came to feel dismay later that day, when Hiruzen requested his former pupil to help him. Well, requested wasn't quite the term. It was either help, or risk Hiruzen handing over certain pieces of information regarding certain activities involving hot springs where after certain accidental events Jiraiya had seen things he was not supposed to see, to a certain woman who would certainly punish Jiraiya severely just like the last time she had caught him peeking. The poor Sannin rubbed his scars when Hiruzen made that request. However, the Hyuga were unaware of the Toad Sage's torture, and Hitomi had decided to not go to Naruto herself. Instead, she had sought out her daughter. Hinata had been confused by the revelation that people from her own clan had wanted her to die. Moreover, it wasn't exactly normal to hear that someone else has been killing people that wanted you to die, either. But still, Hitomi was proud that her daughter was more troubled about the boy's situation than about her own issues. Hitomi knew like no other that it was that empathy that would allow Hinata to reach the true pinnacle of insight with their Kekkei Genkai. Naruto was not exactly depressed, but he had not been seen with his usual smiling facade ever since Haruki died. The boy seemed extremely contemplative, which was no small wonder either. Hitomi had seen how close Haruki and Naruto were. Haruki had clearly been important to Naruto, especially when one contemplated how hard it was to actually get that close to Naruto. As she walked towards her daughter's room, Hitomi chuckled at the thought that both of the kids were equally shy, but manifested it in completely different ways. She couldn't help but look forward to how the both of them would develop. Hinata's affections were pretty obvious, to all but Naruto at least, but Naruto himself might be more of an issue. Well, at the very least, he seems to see Hinata as an exception to all the other human beings around him. That's a start, Hitomi smiled to herself primly. But even Hitomi didn't know how Naruto would think about a subject like love. If he even considered it at all. Well, he is still young. Rounding the last corner, Hitomi knocked and walked into her daughter's room. To her amusement, Hinata was busy reading scrolls on ninjutsu, if she saw it right. She's training. Even now, and Hiyashi-kun keeps saying she doesn't take her position seriously. Mother. The girl asked with some confusion. She couldn't figure out why her mother smiled that way. Hinata, I would like to ask you to do something for me, Hitomi began. When her daughter nodded, Hitomi's smile broadened a bit, and she continued. Just now, your father returned from the council meeting. It seems that two of Konoha's genin earned their promotion, the first being Nara Shikamaru, and the other is Naruto. With a slight blush and a much larger smile than she had shown in days, Hinata listened to her mother and nodded again. I knew Naruto-kun would get promoted, she smiled. Well, his burden raised some concerns among some of those who sit in the council, but his actions during the invasion were rather convincing, Hitomi added finally. Considering how Naruto-kun more or less became the hero that saved Konoha from a lot of suffering, they could hardly refuse him a promotion, right? Yes, Kurenai-sensei said Naruto performed even beyond what could be expected of an experienced chunin, Hinata nodded, recalling her sensei's words from the day before. But why are you telling me, mother? Well, your father asked me to tell Naruto, but I thought you would rather tell him. Hitomi smiled gently, hiding her own amusement when she saw her daughter's blush. I'm certain Naruto would be happy too. It looked to me earlier like he could use something to cheer him up. Hinata nodded. I'll tell Naruto-kun right away, she smiled, hurrying away. Sitting with his back towards the wall, Naruto looked at the training field. On this very field, he had spent many hours trying to improve his taijutsu under Haruki's guidance. Sure, Hizashi had been there every now and then to spar with him after Haruki's health had gotten worse, but Naruto had never really felt much for the stoic twin brother of the Hyuga clan leader. He had been friendly enough at first, for a Hyuga at least, but the bastard had eventually become as cold as his son. Over the past few days, Naruto had been thinking a lot about the last few years. He had accepted Haruki's death. He had known it was inevitable anyway. However, it didn't stop him from missing the man. In a way, Haruki had been like a father to him. He had been one of the few adults who had been there for him, to help him, to guide him, one of the very few who had acknowledged him. Now Naruto had to fend for himself, without the man's guidance and insight, he acknowledged. It just left him with a feeling of loneliness, and that was a feeling which Naruto knew far too well from his past experiences. This loss also left a strange gap inside him. The normal feeling of loneliness felt empty, but this, it hurts, Naruto noted. Perhaps it was because this feeling also showed Naruto that he had not been alone for these last years. Bonds. Naruto mused. How many more do I have? And why do I only fully realize that I care about someone when it is too late? Fate is way too cruel. In such a mood, Naruto stared into the space in front of him. It left him completely oblivious to everything that he could not perceive as a threat. As such, he never noticed that Hinata had been looking at him, that she had been hesitating for a couple of minutes wondering whether to walk up to him or not. In her eyes, it seemed almost rude to interrupt him when he was so lost in thought. Beyond that, she thought he looked sad, making her wish that she could help him, although she didn't know how. Still, she wanted to tell him about his promotion. No, she had to tell him especially because her mother had told her that Naruto would be invited to the family dinner that evening. Naruto-kun, she asked shyly, trying to draw his attention. Hinata. He frowned, as he hadn't even felt her approach. Well, his other sense would not help him much with her, not in the regular way at least. He sighed, knowing that he should stop dozing off and pay attention. I was. Hinata didn't really have an idea how to say what she wanted to say, which was becoming quite obvious to Naruto. There's a bench over there. Shall we sit down over there? Naruto gestured. He considered it rude to ask her to sit on the ground next to him. Sure. So, what is it you wanted to say? Naruto smiled when they sat down. Well, father just returned from the council meeting. I heard you got promoted. Hinata smiled weakly, trying to suppress her usual blush from being so close to Naruto. Promoted. Naruto frowned again, confused for a couple of seconds. Yes. Chunin. Of course, the Chunin exams. He slapped his own head and exclaimed, I completely forgot about that. She giggled softly, despite her concern for him. Yeah, well, the whole invasion thing, and Haruki. Naruto frowned. Well, it just slipped my mind. Can't believe they promoted me though, added, scratching the back of his head, showing his surprise. Why not? Hinata blinked. She really didn't understand him now, as he had exceeded everyone's expectation by a large margin, and then some. Well, he rubbed over his stomach. I thought most people wouldn't like the idea of me becoming a Chunin, he smirked. I thought I was bound to be an eternal genin, he chuckled. Guess that also means I'm going out of Team 8. He thought reluctantly. Well, not that it matters that much, I was supposed to leave Konoha soon anyway, he recalled Jiraiya's plans for training him. It was not that he was completely happy about it. He knew that he would miss his team. No, they were not just his team, they had become his friends, Naruto admitted to himself. Seeing the change in his mood, Hinata wondered what he was thinking. Mother said that you were invited for dinner too, she tried to cheer him up. Dinner was quite awkward, as both Hiashi and Naruto stayed rather silent. Hiashi had congratulated Naruto on his promotion, but the latter was not exactly overjoyed with it, and Hiashi found himself feeling rather distracted as well. He was burdened by his brother's actions. With the elders of his clan breathing down his neck, Hiashi would be forced to make a decision soon, especially now that it turned out that the guest he had been protecting for years had turned out to have murdered several of his kin. Hanabi was not aware of these undercurrents, though. She only saw the strange atmosphere at the table. Her sister had also been acting odd for the last few days now. Her mother seemed a bit agitated too, as much as Hanabi could see, her mother was a bit mysterious to her. As close as Hanabi was to her father, her mother drew more to Hinata. A fact that constantly annoyed the proud scion of the Hyuga clan. Naruto felt mildly disturbed because of the way they were seated. He had joined the family for dinner in the past, yet most of the times Hisashi and Neji had been present as well. Naruto had already heard about their current situation, and did not really care about their fates. However, he was thinking of a way to make sure that Neji lived through this. After all, Naruto wasn't planning on letting the lives of those he spared get wasted. What really disturbed him was the way Hinata and Hanabi had changed seats. Naruto had learned from Haruki that Hiashi, as head, sat on the head of the table. Hitomi was seated on his right, as his wife and matriarch of the clan. And on his left, Hiashi would position the heir of the clan. The Hyuga were extremely picky about these traditions, some even got to the point that they literally resorted to killing people just to get a better seat at the table. Tonight, it seemed like Hinata had lost that position as well. She was the firstborn, but over the years, that position had slowly been corroded. This saddened Naruto, as he knew it was the privilege of Hiashi, and Hiashi alone, to decide about the seats at this table. It was one of the many reasons why Naruto believed that the clan was suffocated by all the rules and traditions. At times, sitting on a certain chair could mean the world to them, yet they called it civilized. After finishing their meal, Hiashi seemed to wake up again. "Hanabi, would you please excuse us?" He surprised his youngest daughter. Although reluctant, she abided by her father's wish, walking out of the room with what passed for a curious look among the more strident Hyuga, at least to Naruto, who had several years of experience at reading the expressions of these people. "Naruto, there are several things I would like to ask you." Hiashi shifted his attention back to Naruto. "Hiashi-sama," Naruto asks, patiently waiting for the questioning he knew that was to come. "You demonstrated a jutsu during the exams, which seems to be tied to a number of deaths within our clan. You're asking me if I killed those people?" Naruto asked calmly. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Simple. They wanted to kill Hinata-sama, and I had sworn to protect her when I was accepted into your clan as a guest." "Why did they want to kill Hinata? How did you know that?" Hiashi frowned, his eyes seemingly piercing right through the blonde boy. Naruto chuckled. "You want to learn how deep the corruption is spread within your clan?" "I'm afraid even I don't know that." He shocked Hiashi, and Hitomi as well. They had not expected the boy to take such a direct approach. Then again, Naruto was never really known for subtlety, not in the area of human interaction at least. "I guess it was over 2 years ago that I sensed someone who had exceedingly bad intentions," Naruto remarked. "Killed that guy, found out he had received his orders from someone else, etc." "These senses?" Hiashi questioned. "You mean the ability to sense malice, which you have due to the Kyuubi?" "Yes. Because of that, I found a guy who tried to sneak into Hinata's bedroom. Well, it wasn't like anyone had not attempted stupid things before, but this guy was different. Worse, much darker than usual. So, I went up to him and asked what he was doing. Well, he just attacked me. Not sure why though, because he was rather weak." Naruto shrugged. "I killed him, and disposed of his body afterwards. I figured that people wouldn't be all too happy about me killing someone from the clan." "How?" Hiashi demanded. "How I killed him?" "Snapped his neck." Naruto gestured with his hands, at which Hinata twitched a little more. "And I threw him in the forest of death, just like the others I found after that incident. The wildlife there didn't mind having some extra food, and it's the best way to get rid of someone without leaving a trace." Hinata paled when she heard the calculating and emotionless tone he spoke with. "I knew that Naruto was used to a much harsher reality, but this. How many did you know? Wait, how often did it happen?" Hiashi frowned. "Well, the first few times it had been branch family members, and when I got curious I found out they were forced to do it by one of the main family," Naruto answered emotionlessly. By now he had completely dropped his usual facade, showing his serious side to the family. "I got a little angry when I found out I had killed people who were forced into that position, so I decided to get to the bottom of it." "From the main. Was that Hajime?" Hitomi guessed. This man had been the first of the main family who had mysteriously vanished, and he had held a very high-ranking position within the clan. "Was that old Scarface's name?" Naruto shrugged, not caring as he had only remembered the man with the nickname he had given him due to the scars on the man's face. Hajime had not been the first of the main house to suffer from an attempt to steal the Byakugan. "Well, it doesn't matter. He died easy enough. He never had much chance, because of my stealth seal. He never saw me coming, so disabling him was easy. But still, he refused to talk, stubborn fool." Hiashi rubbed his forehead. So this had been the truth about Hyuga Hajime. The man had been one of the 5 clan elders at the time, and had amassed a large position in Konoha's real estate market. His loss had created a bit of an issue in the clan, because his inheritance had to be spread over 2 sons and a daughter. The headaches that Hiyashi had suffered from dealing with their infighting returned with a vengeance when he thought back to how much time he had wasted trying to mediate their squabbling. After I killed that guy, things stayed quiet for some time, Naruto continued on an indifferent tone. Then I heard Haruki talk about people from the branch who suddenly disappeared without a trace. You were not involved with that. Hitomi frowned. She knew that nearly a dozen people had gone missing in the period after Hajime's death. Nope. Someone else was getting rid of loose ends, I guess. And thoroughly as well, because I never found out who was behind it, Naruto explained. The icy look in his bright blue eyes made Hinata shiver. But after a while, they tried again. And knowing that someone had been copying me, probably in an attempt to making it all look like the doing of a single person, I started using a new jutsu. Did you find out who was behind it that time? Hiyashi wondered. After Hajime, no one of his standing had been involved in this matter. At least, none of them seemed capable of being the mastermind behind it all. The peons who were sent out to harm Hinata-sama always died when I managed to catch them. I think it was because of some kind of seal that killed them when I got them to talk. I never found out how they did it exactly, but I know that it wasn't that seal on their head, Naruto said coldly. And the few of them that I could confirm were involved, they were never in the really high positions. Naruto held back from the family that he had strong suspicions that 2 of the elders were involved. The elders had increased their guardedness after Hajime's disappearance, making it difficult, even for Naruto, to get through without being noticed. The fact that one of them was Hiyashi's own father didn't help either. Besides, even with the stealth seal, they were still Hyuga. So getting away with it without being detected at all was problematic at best. Naruto had had no intention of fighting a full guard detail by himself. But why my daughter? Hiyashi demanded to know. Some people feared that she would become the next head of the clan, while others just tried to harm the main family. Seems like Hinata's kindness is seen as a threat, Naruto shrugged. He saw Hiyashi's brow rise, indicating a slight surprise. It makes her a potential danger to those who profit most from the current system within the clan. If she thought of loosening the main's control over the branch, and restricting the idiotic privileges which the main family has. Although Hiyashi was not a great advocate of the system in which the branch was ruled by the main family, he stiffened nonetheless. This was a deep tradition which Naruto had just insulted, and a necessary evil. History had shown that a grant of such liberty would only be exploited. It had been rules and traditions that had kept the Hyuga unified, which had kept the Hyuga strong, Hiyashi reassured himself. The very notion that his weak daughter would change a system which had worked well for many decades was rather ridiculous to him. While it was not a system without flaws, in Hiyashi's opinion it was the best option they had. What would these children know about it? Hiyashi had smoothed many of his father's harsher laws regarding the branch, and now he saw how Hizashi, his own brother, repaid that. His own father had not neglected to remind Hiyashi of it over the last few days. If he gave the branch a tiny bit of freedom, they would just proceed to chaos, and the fall of his clan. Hitomi recognized his train of thought, and sighed. As much as she loved her husband, the burden of his position had made him cynical about human nature. Being strong is no guarantee of being right, Naruto remarked with a harsh voice, shocking the Hyuga. Hitomi realized that the boy was far sharper than she gave him credit for. How much had Haruki taught this boy? Both the people from the branch, and the people from the main family, they are both human beings capable of good and evil. Bloodlines say nothing about the quality of a person. Hitomi nodded. There are also good people on both sides, both in the branch and the main family, she agreed. But the fate of the branch puts quite a strain on their people. The way Hizashi-sama will be treated will be seen as exemplary of how the branch is treated, Naruto interrupted her. Or should I say, another example. I know this is not really my business, but if the branch is cornered even further, things will end up badly. Naruto stood up and bowed to his host and hostess. And other than Hinata-sama, I am not planning on taking sides in this conflict, if things should really get out of control, he remarked while moving towards the door. But if Hinata-sama is harmed in any way, he growled lowly, revealing a deep inhuman voice. His head turned towards them and a pair of crimson eyes pierced into Hiyashi's white eyes. I will not spare a single soul if I am forced to retaliate. No matter their position, no matter their blood. I have sworn an oath, and I will keep it. Hiyashi sat and looked as Naruto closed the door. He could hardly believe that a boy of his age had the guts to talk like that. But he knew the threat was not baseless. The sheer killing intent that had radiated from the boy was a proof of it. Not to mention that Naruto had proven that he would not sit by idly when his Hinata was in danger. Considering the rate at which his powers were expanding, and what he had already showed during the finals, Hiyashi paused. He couldn't deny that Naruto was right, the branch was indeed growing restless. But unlike him, Hiyashi wasn't naive enough to think Hisashi's actions could be left unpunished. Hinata looked at her mother with a pair of eyes which were wide open in shock. Hitomi knew she had a lot of work to do before her daughter would fully realize what was going on in her clan. But the first thing the girl would need to know was the real history of her clan. This would be a busy time. A day later, 3 letters were delivered to the Hyuga estate. 3 copies of an invitation which left Naruto feeling rather conflicted. It might be good for you, you know, she remarked. She had lazily curled up on top of Naruto's chest, with him flabbily lying on his couch. His apartment was a mess, with scrolls lying all around, but he didn't really care. He didn't feel all that energetic. There were so many things that he wanted to focus his thoughts on, and now another subject had entered his mind. After having read the letter, he had dropped it to the ground, and had closed his eyes, slowly drifting away while he was lost in thought. What? A party? To celebrate? Now? Naruto shook his head. Especially now. You dumb two-leg, she continued, when she saw that the blonde didn't understand. There has been enough drama now. Like Haruki himself would have said, it is time to move on. Besides, White-Eye Two-Leg Heim would probably want someone to escort her to the party. Maybe. But me at a party? What the hell am I supposed to be doing there? Naruto sighed. I'm not really in the mood, and considering the show I gave during the finals I bet they would rather not have me around. If they didn't want you there, they wouldn't have sent you a letter, would they? Naruto frowned. He could swear the cat had started to meddle with more and more things that weren't her business. Seems like she changed as well. After Haruki's death, Naruto pondered. He didn't know, but he was right. She did start to take things a little more seriously after the man had died, because she blamed herself for being weak. For still being weak. He sighed. Fine, I'll go. You win. Fluffy little meddler. Naruto would have found this self-recrimination rather pointless, as Jiraiya himself had told him that one of the captured Oto nins had revealed that the gray-haired shinobi who had been killed by Haruki had been one of Orochimaru's most trusted men, as well as a spy skilled enough that he had operated inside Konoha's walls for years without anyone noticing. But he knew Chi was surprisingly stubborn. Trying to talk her out of something was usually impossible. Unless you were Akko. Then again, Naruto himself knew well enough not to mess around with the young woman. Angry women are scary. Good thing the Kyuubi is male, or I would have been doomed. With much internal rejoicing, Hinata received Naruto at the main house's waiting hall, when he came to pick her up to walk to the Nara estate together. Like Naruto, she and Neji had been invited too, as had all members of Team 7, 8, 10, as well as Team Guy. Of course, under the current conditions, the Hyuga had sent back an apology stating that Neji could not attend due to clan affairs. Although she was happy to be near him, all the things she had learned during the last few days had made Hinata feel as if she had hardly known Naruto. Walking alongside, she furtively looked at him. He had the strongest and most remarkable chakra she knew. If he was angry, he was like the hot summer sun, scorching with an unrelenting heat, burning away any obstacle in his path. But on some occasions, which happened with increased frequency even since he joined Team 8, Naruto seemed far more kind, gentle and warm, and a beacon of hope to people like her. But armed with the knowledge she now had, she realized how merciless he was to those he saw as his enemies. Hinata still got shivers when she thought back about the conversation she had with her mother, when she asked if Naruto would really have killed Neji. I cannot say that I know for sure what Naruto would have done or not, but I could not see any hesitation in him, Hitomi had explained. Even his threat to us was not something to trifle with. He spared Neji because you asked him, but even still, he punished him severely. I have little doubt that he would have killed Neji, much like how he killed all those others. Only then Hinata had learned of the extent of Neji's injuries. Her cousin continuously suffered from the wounds on his chest, and the wound on his head had left him incapacitated for several days. However, strangely, Neji's seal had vanished too. Even Hitomi could not tell why even the elders of their clan had been unable to reapply it, Hinata found. Thus caught in her own reflections, Hinata was not aware that she was not exactly subtle in how she watched Naruto. It was something that worried him. After all, would she treat him differently now she knew what he had done? Would she be afraid? Is it hard? Naruto wondered, shaking Hinata from her musings. To see through the lies that others try to tell you. Seeing the girl's confused expression, Naruto continued. I bet it must be, sometimes, must be more comfortable to believe a lie than to be confronted with the truth all of the time. Like they say, ignorance is a bliss, right? Sometimes, Hinata uttered. It feels rather lonely. I see, Naruto nodded. He looked her in her eyes, and sighed. Ever since I was little, I could sense the hatred in others. At first I didn't understand. Then I learned to avoid people that felt like that, associating the feeling with the painful things that usually followed. I eventually came to despise nearly everyone, because everyone has some darkness in their heart. Until one day I came to the conclusion that humans were all hateful and despicable creatures, Naruto admitted. Still, people like you are proof that there are good people too. You showed me that there is more than only darkness in a person's heart. Hinata was left speechless and looked at him, and he chuckled. Though I doubt I would have spared Neji's life. Hey, I guess that makes me not such a good a person either. I highly doubt people can just change their views like that. But perhaps you are right. Perhaps even those who have fallen can rise up again. It would certainly be a nice idea. It would make the world a bit less hopeless. I think we should and never give up hope, Hinata blushed a little. Perhaps, Naruto shrugged. I really hope you're right about him. Do you regret killing all those people, and Naruto-kun? Why? Naruto frowned. They wanted to kill you, so I removed them. That's what shinobi do, right? Hinata looked down, and started to fidget with her index fingers again. But, at the academy, they told us it was difficult to kill. First time was strange, yes, Naruto admitted. However, he couldn't help but smile. She, and so many others of their age group were training to become shinobi, but never actually killed someone. Up till now, it was more a role they had played. Eventually they would all have to face the harshness of reality. But like your eyesight, I too have a unique sense. As such, I do not try to waste any pity the people who know no pity. Who deserve no pity? Is it that easy? Hinata asked with her eyes wide in surprise. She could never imagine herself killing someone else, despite her position as a shinobi. She knew it was inevitable she would one day have to do it, but she did not look forward to that day yet Naruto talked about it so casually. I didn't say it was easy, Naruto laughed softly. But when I have a choice to either dirty my hands and keep my friends safe, or do nothing and allow them to die, I think it is pretty obvious which way I should pick. By the way, do we have to turn left here, or at the next crossing? He asks, upon looking around and pointing at said alley. I believe the Nara compound was a little further, and then on the left, Hinata replied. But, why did you do it? Naruto blinked as he looked at her. Of all the people, they threatened the one who felt different from all others. I'm so used to sensing hatred all around me, but it's almost like you are the inverse of that. It's true that I once swore to protect you because it felt like it was my duty, in order to repay you for what you have done for me. Because of you, I could live among the Hyuga, Naruto smiled. But I don't care anymore about duty and whatnot. You are my friend, and I will never stand by idly when my friends are in trouble. Hinata blushed deeply, and nodded, not knowing what to say, not knowing if she could even speak. Naruto had done so much for her, she barely began to understand how much, and yet he talked about her as if she was the one saving him. It boggled her, and she tried to figure it out while they approached the Nara compound. Naruto, however, would not say it was Hinata who had given him a reason to carry on. The Kyuubi had pushed away everyone from him, leaving Naruto feeling lonely and sad in an environment where everyone despised him. That was until one night, when he had met that little girl with her remarkable eyes, that little girl who, after it all had passed, had been the one to change his life so much. She was the girl who begged her father to take him in, the girl who felt so differently from all other people that Naruto had ever met. Naruto never really understood the emotions of others, but he did value that strange feeling that came from the girl. All he had seen throughout his life was hatred, so this different feeling confused him. It intrigued him. Even if he did not understand it, he saw it as the sole beacon of light in all the darkness that surrounded him. A light unique to his world, as even his other friends did not radiate the way she did. In a world filled with fear and hatred, she showed him that not everyone was bad. Z. Bonus. The birth of the Pa clan. Mark the cat's speech with asterisk. So, whatever, asterisk Suda said. She hopped down from the fence. That butcher had been stupid enough to fall for her feint, and now she was satisfied after eating the loot she had gotten. The man brought it on himself though. He should not have been so stupid as to insult Naruto while Chi was nearby. Stupid civilians still don't see the difference between Whisker Two-Leg and the nine-tailed bastard sealed within him. Idiots. They should blame me if I retaliate in Whisker's name, the cat huffed. He saved their grumpy 2 legs and they still have the gall to speak about him as if he is some kind of monster. Moronic 2 legs. Crossing the street, she then saw something very peculiar. 2 ordinary cats were dragging a tiny cart, one they likely stole from a child, and on this cart they had some kind of strange charred hump of meat. And not the tasty kind of meat, by the looks of it. UGHH. I wouldn't even feed that garbage to those annoying Inuzuka ninkin. Still, the behavior of her lesser cousins confused her, and she wouldn't be Chi if she was able to contain her curiosity. She never was able to, especially not since coming to Konoha. However, Akko was the sole exception to the rule. She knew better than to annoy the woman who prepared her such delicious meals. Greetings, cousins, what are you doing with that hump of meat? She asked in a language her lesser cousins would understand. But while the cat on the left, a ginger male, looked at her absently, his brown-furred brother completely ignored her. It was not the kind of behavior Chi was expecting. She was royalty compared to these nincompoops, so ignoring her was a grave insult. However, she didn't retaliate. She never got the time to do so. Strings of chakra sprung forth from the charred hump of meat the 2 felines were transporting. They would be nothing beyond a mere annoyance to Chi. Whatever this thing is, it has a mind of its own. Weak chakra control too. Perhaps it is exhausted or just wounded. Would make sense. That's why it forces Red Fur and Brownie to help it. Troublesome. With a quick lash of her claws she severed the strings that allowed the hump to control the 2 cats. I don't know what kind of thing you guys were moving around, but little Humpy here is going down, asterisk she declared. No, don't touch the master. The ginger cat meowed. He promised us cookies. He added desperately. Lots of cookies. Asterisk. She gave the others no time to resist, cookies or not. Quickly transforming into her adult form, she sank her teeth into the charred hump of meat, ignoring the foul taste of burned flesh, and took off. That day, several people witnessed a giant black and white cat with a chunk of meat in her mouth being chased by 2 smaller cats. No one understood what was going on, no one would ever understand, and no one really cared. However, when the cats crossed a street where Team 10 was walking, Shikamaru did care about the strange thing he saw, mostly because he knew Ino would be annoying enough to want to go figure out what was going on, and she always dragged him and Choji along. It was a good thing she was just looking through a nearby window, apparently scouting for her next shopping spree. And clothing was one of the few things that had precedence over cats in the Yamanaka's mindset. Meanwhile, in a panicked frenzy the lump of meat tried to resist Chi, desperately trying to latch its chakra threads to Chi's body in order to control her. But it was too weak, or Chi just too strong. Chi guessed the first, but would have preferred the latter assessment. Chi smirked at the idea that entered her head. Sorry Chibi Mutt, it seems that I have to take back my own words, and cause some stomach aches to you brethren. Just be glad it isn't a laxative like last time. Leaving the 2 cats in the dust, she charged on towards her destination. Simply walking up the wall, she entered the Inuzuka compound. It was not her favorite place to be, considering all the tail-biting four legs that lived there, but she had a goal this time. After all, she knew the schedule of the clan very well, and it would be feeding time any minute now. After all, she did pull a prank every now and then, if only to annoy Akamaru, and knowing their timetable was definitely invaluable. However, Kiba's nest mate was her medic. It would not pay to let her medic know that she had pranked her, or her three partners. She had not forgotten Hana's threat of removing Chi's nails. Moving quickly, she dropped the lump of meat into the big bowls where several clan members already had deposited food for their dogs. Jumping up into a nearby tree, she ignored the dogs that soon walked down to the bowls, hoping they would ignore her as well. However, Kuromaru noticed her, and looked mistrustingly at the bowls, then up to her. No pranks this time, patchy four-leg, I swear on my own tail, she sighed. Seriously, I only threw some laxative in there once. I'm not lame enough to repeat my own pranks. That would be stupid. Whether the explanation was enough, or that it was just that his hunger was too compelling, Kuromaru turned to his food, sniffed a few times, and ignored the feline. By the time the two cats finally caught up, and worked up the courage to enter the infamous cat-killing compound, it was already too late. Their master had been devoured, and its control over them had been undone. You freed us, asterisk the ginger cat bowed his head. We are forever in your debt, asterisk his brown-furred brother followed his example. She blinked a few times as another devious idea entered her mind. Underlings, that could be fun, what are your names? Asterisk. I'm Ciro, asterisk the brown cat replied, proudly waving with his tail to show off its white tip. And this is my younger brother Sakana. Asterisk. Sakana. Fish. Asterisk. Yeah, you can't imagine the things he does for food. That's how our owners gave him the name after he stole the fish off their table when we were kittens. Inoichi-sama still doesn't trust him around the kitchen. Asterisk. And you're in my debt you said. Asterisk. Yes, my lady. Asterisk. The two cats were caught by surprise when she let out a cat's version of an evil chuckle. All of Konoha's catnip shall be ours. Our clan's rule shall be unmatched. Muahaha. Asterisk. Large sweat drops formed at the back of the heads of the two males. Did we just trade one insane master for the other? Ciro whispered to his brother. Completely oblivious to his brother's concern, as well as the drops of drool that fell from his mouth, the ginger cat replied, probably, but if there will be catnip, I'm game. Asterisk. Slapping his paw against his face, Ciro sighed. It's always about food, isn't it? Asterisk. Did I mention that I was planning on robbing the dango shop on Main Street? She purred. Ciro knew he could just as well give up and just follow. His brother had already lost his mind. Chapter 39. Celebrations. Looking down on the two youngsters who were walking toward their party, Yamato sighed. He had just chased away two chunin who sought to hurt Naruto. Many people seemed to be after the boy these days, some to just spy on him, and then there were idiots like these two who wished to attack the young Jinchuriki. Hokage-sama won't be pleased if he hears about this, Yamato sighed. I never expected that so many people would react this foolishly. I know not everyone has the discipline of the Anbu Corps, but still. Be happy, you saved those morons, a voice sounded up from behind him. Looking behind him, Yamato saw Naruto approaching him. While Yamato was annoyed that a green chunin like Naruto had managed to sneak up to him, he didn't show it. Don't worry, I'm just a cage bunshin. I felt those too, but thanks for dealing with them, Naruto said, nodding his head to express his gratitude. However, Yamato couldn't help but hear the slight hint of sarcasm in his voice, as if the situation was just a joke to him. Interesting to see your Mokuden by the way, seems like Ero Sennin really does know who to pick for the job, the bunshin smiled before he vanished in a puff of smoke. Returning his gaze down to the original Naruto who moved on with Hinata as if nothing strange happened, Yamato wondered why he had even accepted this job. An easy job, he said. Only watch a kid, he said. Get the first edition of my next book, he said. I'll even sign it for you, he said. Guarding him is merely a precaution, he said. Damn you Jiraiya-sama, This job is not nearly as easy as you wanted to make it seem, Yamato sighed again. Good thing this job is only temporary, he grumbled under his breath, thinking back to Jiraiya's promises. After receiving the update from his Kage Bunshin, Naruto frowned a bit. So Yamato has a Kekkei Genkai too. Must be pretty neat to have such a unique skill. And Mokuden of all things. I wonder if I could do something like that with my 3 elements, Naruto mused. Well, it's not like my control over Raiden is anywhere near the level that I would be able to properly use it. Naruto knew all too well that he had to work on his regular ninjutsu, as well as his taijutsu. Genjutsu was a field where he just had little talent. He had passed the academy, but even that, the academy had pretty low standards regarding genjutsu, took much effort. To top it off, he did not like the principle of illusions anyway. No, he had the requirements to be the ninjutsu type of fighter, the raw amounts of chakra, and perhaps he could use his affinities in such a way that he could become just as fearsome as the Mizukage, Naruto reckoned. He had heard several stories of how she glided through the ranks of Odo and Suna shinobi, slaughtering their ranks as if they were nothing. It had certainly raised his interest in the more advanced uses of chakra nature transformation. If the Chunin exams had taught him one thing, it was that he was still vulnerable. Sure, with proper preparation Naruto knew he could defeat anyone, but the sheer speed that some of the competitors had showcased during the finals, as well as lead during the preliminaries, was a bit worrisome. Naruto knew that he did not have the strong and adaptable defenses that Gaara had. No, if he ever encountered a faster opponent while not having the initiative in a battle. Overly relying on pure fuinjutsu would make me too slow. I need to improve myself or I'll be a sitting duck. I can't rely on that damned fox to bail me out every time, I need to be able to do it on my own. While they strolled, Naruto and Hinata amused themselves with ideas of how a party would go at the infamous lazy Nara family home, but it all turned out to be surprisingly normal. It turned out that not every Nara was as lazy as Shikamaru, especially not his mother. While Kiba had always told them how fearsome Inuzuka Sume was, and Naruto had seen it confirmed a few times now, they found that Shikamaru's mother would certainly give Sume a run for her money. In Shikamaru's own words, Nara Yoshino could definitely be labeled as troublesome. Perhaps even S-rank troublesome, by Naruto's estimations, after he saw her scold one of the guards at the gate. Naruto did not pity the guard, however, the fool shouldn't have tried to stop him even when Naruto proffered an invitation. Ah well, it's not the first time, and definitely not the last time, that someone picks on me because of fuzzball. Seeing Yoshino almost made Naruto start to regret that not all the Nara were lazy cloud watchers as Shikamaru was. She sure as hell was an intimidating sight to behold, once angered. But when she turned to Hinata, Yoshino acted completely different. The bulging vein that previously showed on her forehead had vanished, and apologized for the guard's behavior. Tell Hitomi-san that I'll visit her next week, okay? She smiled before she directed them to her house. Yoshino-san is a fan of RT ceremonies, Hinata explained, noticing Naruto's slightly confused look. Soon after they saw 2 more Nara. Flanked by his father, a man Hinata knew was Nara Shikaku, head of the Nara clan. Shikamaru walked over to them as the two approached the house where Shikamaru and his parents lived. Glad you two could come too, Shikamaru smiled weakly. So Neji's definitely not coming. I got the letter, but still. Injuries aside, Neji is kinda caught up in some clan business, Naruto apologized on behalf of Hinata. It'll probably keep him occupied for a while. But, congratulations. Happy about your promotion. Shikamaru frowned a bit. Thanks. You too, by the way. Me happy about this. Yeah, well, it's going to be troublesome to do all the extra work, but at least I don't have to take that pain in the ass exam again. I should thank you for that. My dad told me that I owe you for my promotion. Naruto blinked and looked up at Shikaku. Because of you, my son distinguished himself during the invasion, the scarred Jonin explained, as if it were completely logical. Because of those actions, he caught the Hokage's attention and earned his promotion. Even without performing during the final round of the Chunin exams. Naruto shrugged and shook his head politely. I'm not responsible for what Shikamaru did. He did that all by himself, well, together with Tamari-san, actually. I was already completely spent at that point, and he and Tamari-san only brought me to the barrier so I could create an opening with the last bit of chakra I had. I really didn't do much other than that. He earned that promotion by himself, not because of me. Why yes, Shikamaru-san earned his position in the exams all by himself, Hinata added. Choji-san said Team 10 advanced so far because of Shikamaru, even Ino-sane admitted that. Shikaku chuckled a bit at Shikamaru when his son made a lazy effort to downplay his own actions. Seems like my son is still too modest. Perhaps I need to challenge him a bit more during our training in order to reveal some more of these hidden qualities, he said, with a wide smirk, as he wished them fun and walked off. Damn it. Even more training, Shikamaru grimaced. Please don't say anything more. If they give me any more training I'll die. I know I will, so especially don't say a thing when my mother is around. She keeps nagging me about this Chunin stuff, the troublesome woman. So you're still too lazy to train, I see. Naruto smirked. Look who's talking. You were the one who slept about as much as I did during the academy years, Shikamaru countered. Only because I already exhausted myself because I had trained the rest of the day. Besides, the backlash of my bunshin was quite annoying back then, Naruto smirked. Oh, I see you even invited Haku. He added with curiosity, spying the small crowd gathered in the yard. Looking over the people who had gathered, Hinata saw all the rookie teams plus Team Guy minus Neji, along with the 4 sensei of the teams, but she also saw the young shinobi from Kurigakure. Yeah, Haku helped us during the finals, so I guess I had to invite him too. Shikamaru shrugged. Tried Tamari too, but the 3 from Suna couldn't come. Our messenger couldn't even get the letter to them, found that they were off limits, and that the letter instead had to go to Jiraiya-sama. Naruto laughed softly. Yeah, they are still confined, but they'll go to their new quarters soon. You can visit them next week, if you want to. I'm going to be Gaara's guard, Naruto explained, seeing the sharp look from Shikamaru. What? I thought it made sense to let one demon guard the other, right? Shikamaru paled a bit. Ah, come on, Naruto sighed. With your brains, you already knew. Don't try to fool me, I may not be as smart as you are, but I'm not a complete idiot. It was of course true that Shikamaru had deduced that Naruto was the container of the Kyuubi, but still, it was not an idea that the Nara liked. It had been the only logical conclusion Shikamaru could reach after seeing the finals. It was the only possible way for Naruto, whose abilities had always been shrouded in secrecy, to match the demonic power of Gaara. It was the only explanation of why Naruto's chakra could spike like that, or why he could physically change like that. He held another chakra, something that definitely was not human. Shikamaru was no censor, but the foul chakra he sometimes felt radiating from Naruto undoubtedly belonged to the only demon associated with Konohagakure, the Kyuubi. Still, getting this confirmed so casually shocked Shikamaru a bit, as he, against better judgment, had hoped for a more sensible explanation. Well, he couldn't claim to be sure about what was considered sensible, under the current conditions, he conceded. The world had gone insane. Sure, he knew nearly everyone hated Naruto for some reason. Shikamaru and Choji had always been the only 2 aside from Hinata who had been willing to work with Naruto at the academy, and during that time Shikamaru had seen a lot of things that just didn't add up. Nevertheless, he had hoped that his friend, well, Naruto was not the most approachable person he knew, but Shikamaru considered him to be a friend nonetheless, had not suffered such a burden. As the 3 talked, Kurenai approached them, followed by a smiling and waving Kiba with an equally cheerful Akamaru on top of his head. Excuse me Shikamaru-san, could I talk to my team for a moment? She asked Shikamaru, who grunted, still lost in thought, and moved towards the food-loaded table where Choji was last seen. Congratulations, Naruto, Kurenai smiled warmly. You definitely earned it, and finally get something good out of this whole ordeal. I'm proud of what you did, even though I hope you never take such a dangerous gamble again. I would rather that the whole invasion never happened, and would gladly stuck to being a genin, Naruto grimaced. But hell, it happened. No point in complaining now. And it's not like I'm going to fight a Biju each day anyway. Kurenai nodded. Yes, I suppose that's true. But still, what you did was extremely dangerous. But you are right, it happened. Now we have to move on. Speaking of which, We need to discuss a few things, as your promotion to Chunin will also change our team. Change our team. Hinata widened her white eyes in shock. Naruto will eventually be transferred out of Team 8, Kurenai sighed. After all, he was promoted to Chunin, while you two remain Genin for the time being. No way. No freaking way, Kiba protested. No. Why would we agree with that? I refuse. Naruto is part of Team 8, no matter what kind of shitty ranks we all have. I don't give a damn about that. It will happen because a Chunin can't stay in a team of Genin that has yet to go for promotions, Kurenai explained. It wouldn't be a point if the Genin didn't have the potential to qualify for the Chunin exams. In that case, the team would have remained intact and both Hinata and you would have had to depend on field promotions if you wanted to make it to Chunin. But in your cases, I venture that promotion is only a matter of time. Well, if it had not been such a difficult exam this year, considering the amount of extraordinary Genin that participated, I would guess that you both would have had a very good chance to earn your promotions already, Kurenai suggested to Kiba and a surprised Hinata. P promoted. Me, Hinata uttered. But, you had the bad luck to face Neji, who would probably have been one of the strongest, if not the strongest, participant if it had not been for Naruto and Gaara, Kurenai frowned. No offense, Naruto, but being a Jinchuriki really is a form of cheating, she chuckled. Hey, well, the referees were free to take the fuzzball out of me, if they had had some way to do it that didn't kill me, Naruto laughed humorlessly. But yes, I agree that most others would have lost to you, Hinata-sama, Naruto added with a real smile. I told you that your Juken is very problematic to deal with, not to mention that your eyesight is probably better than Neji's. I bet that aside from Neji, only guys like Haku and Sasuke would have stood a chance against you. Everyone else would have been screwed. And Kiba, from what I've seen, you would probably have been amongst the highest ranking Genin with regard to taijutsu, Kurenai continued. You really should have been able to counter or dispel that genjutsu better, but we will train at that. The fact that you pushed the Uchiha boy that far pretty much proves my point. Kiba grinned a bit sheepishly, surprised to get such praise. Compared to Naruto, both he and Hinata had felt rather weak. But now they heard that it was not them who were weak, but Naruto who simply was strong. Small wonder, with that Kyuubi. Kiba realized. Though, it would be cheap to say that it is the demon that gives Naruto the advantage. The bastard trains harder than anyone else. But you said. Eventually, sensei. Naruto returned to the original topic. Yes, for now, Team 8 is ordered to guard the 3 Genin from Sunagaku, Kurenai nodded. With all the losses and wounded right now, Konoha is understaffed. It will probably mean that I have to go on solo missions in the meantime, but that'll be worked out eventually. After all, I heard that you have your own guard now, so you will not get in trouble. Guard? You have a guard, Naruto. Kiba smirked. Yeah, they dropped some Anbu guy on me. The guys is lurking in the shadow around me, keeping the more annoying people away, Naruto sighed. Apparently it has been a bit of a shock to people to learn that I've become this strong, you know, with the Kyuubi and all. Hinata felt a bit sad. On their way here, she had seen that 2 men had watched them, but when Naruto saw that she noticed them, he simply said that they would be dealt with soon. And indeed, a much stronger man interfered before the 2 observers could jump down towards them. Still, Hinata felt hurt by the mere idea that Naruto would have to leave them, that there would again be a distance between them. Not now, she wished, not when she finally had the feeling that she started to understand the boy who had been mystery to her for most of her life. Kiba was equally annoyed by this turn of events, if not outright pissed off. It was bad enough that the original Team 8 was changed, but in the end it worked out pretty well. And now they want to rip the pack apart again, all for a few stupid rules. Screw those rules. His frustration was easily seen by Kurenai and she decided to put an end to it. Listen, with Naruto being a Chunin, Team 8 cannot participate in the Chunin exams in its current form, Kurenai sighed. It would mean that the both of you would remain Genin, or like I said, left hoping for field promotions, which do not occur that often. Those also usually take a lot of missions and therefore a lot of time, as you do not qualify for higher ranking missions. I would say that would be a waste of potential for both of you. Both of you have it in you to become Chunin, and likely even Jonin, depending on the way you two develop over time. Still, no matter what her arguments were, Kurenai saw that Hinata remained defiant, while Kiba openly disagreed. I appreciate your concern, Naruto smiled. But there is no need to protest. Naruto-kun. Naruto sighed. I told you, I'm your friend, just drop the suffixes. You ordered me to do so as well, right? He smirked. But no, what I mean to say is that I soon have to leave Konoha anyway. This was a surprise, even to Kurenai. The old pervert plans to take me in as his student, full-time, Naruto explained. I did not really want to. Not yet at least. I hate to tell you guys about this right now, this being a party and all, and it isn't completely official yet. But I know it is going to happen, despite not knowing exactly when. Well, to be precise, Naruto expected that Jiraiya would at least remain here as long as Hiruzen still lived, but he couldn't say that not even to his teacher and his friends. The truth about the health of Sarutobi Hiruzen was one of the most important secrets kept in Konoha. Naruto sighed again and continued. I just like going on missions with you guys so much. You guys make me almost feel normal. Sure, I had hoped that my performance in the exams would change the way the people in Konoha would see me. But the only thing that has changed so far is that more people want to kill me, that they fear me even more. Naruto shrugged, although Hinata could see the small hints of disappointment in his blue eyes. And, some of the Hyuga are pissed at me right now, but that's something else. You are a hero, Naruto, Hinata protested softly. Many people know that. It's just, some people only grew to fear you more because of the strength you showed them. They will realize what you have done, when things calm down a bit. Yeah, no matter how you look at it, that power of yours is insane, Kiba chuckled. I'd be scared as well, if I knew you could be my enemy one day, especially when we are still just kids. Hell, who knows what kind of insanely strong shinobi you will be in 10 years. It wouldn't be surprising if you would be the second one to get an international flee on-site order with his S rank, just like the Yondaime himself. Perhaps, but I don't want to be feared. Power has never been my goal, Naruto shrugged. It's just a means to an end, not to mention that I have to keep improving, or that fox will tear me apart. That's why I have to leave Konoha, so that Jiraiya can train me in how to deal with that furry bastard. I'm even supposed to be going to the home of the toads that I summon, in order to receive special training. If I followed my heart, I would stay with you guys, but I know that I would only put you all in danger if I didn't deal with the fox first. The seal will not last forever, so I have to be prepared to withstand more and more of the Kyuubi's chakra. I know my duty. Naruto is correct, Kurenai agreed, smiling as she saw Akamaru begging Naruto to pet him. The little pup was remarkably sharp in noticing the feelings of others, quite in contrast to the oblivious Kiba himself, and tried to comfort Naruto a bit. But I am sure Team 8 will keep functioning properly. I heard that Karen will most likely replace you, once she gets through all the procedures. Karen. Kiba paled a little. Ah, you traitor, he whispered to the happily barking Akamaru. I see. So Kiba at least will get a lot more attention now, Naruto chuckled, despite the situation, earning him a sharp look from the Inuzuka. What? Isn't it obvious? She's damn scary when no one else is around, Kiba coughed, looking away. But I guess it's better than some random other idiot, at least we know the type of insanity she has. And what about Team 10? He quickly changed the subject. I don't know, Kurenai admitted. I haven't heard Asuma talk about who would replace Shikamaru. However, the whole Ino-Shika-Cho dynamic is important to their team, and it's a tradition in Konoha. So, maybe things will be differently for them, but I'm not sure, but they will need another member for the next exam. I'm sure Asuma wouldn't take the risk of adding a new member to his team just before the exam, as it would mess up the teamwork. That's why I want Karen to join Team 8 as soon as she is allowed. It will take some time and training to get the team balanced again. After some further arguing, Naruto noticed someone approaching them. To his surprise, it turned out to be Haku, the very person he had intended to seek out. So, what is it you wanted to talk about in private? Naruto frowned, once they moved away from all the others. I was requested to ask you if you wanted to visit Mizukage-sama tomorrow, Uzumaki-san, Haku said formally. Hokage-sama handed Mizukage-sama something, and she wishes to share some information about it with you. I see. Naruto rubbed his chin. Is tomorrow morning okay with her? I guess it is. Haku vaguely assented. I know Mizukage-sama is supposed to meet Hokage-sama at 11 o'clock, so any time before that should not be an issue. Great. Then I'll be there at 10 o'clock. I wanted to ask Miss Mizukage some things too. Anyway, so this works out perfectly. Naruto smiled, as he gestured Haku to follow him back to the party. So, did Shikamaru invite you? Yes, Nara-san said he wanted to thank me for helping him during the invasion, not that I could do much, Haku smiled gently. It is a little odd to be at a party like this. I never imagined Konoha to be like this. Really? So what does Kurigakure think about us? Sakura felt hurt, not physically. No, that'd been healed long ago. Her loss at the exams was long forgotten, erased by a much greater pain. She wished she could take back the many times that she had thought that her parents were meddlesome, loud, and occasionally just plain annoying. The death of her mother during the invasion had left her devastated, and her father as well. After Mebuki's burial, Haruno Kazashi had tried to find a way out, a path away from his sorrow and despair. His solution had been alcohol, lots of it, to Sakura's chagrin. Dealing with her own sadness, while also having to care for her drunk of a father, was too much for her. She was tired, so extremely tired. Ino visited daily, trying to help her, but Sakura was convinced that her best friend wouldn't really understand her pain. No one would. Well, Sasuke might have, Sakura had speculated, considering how he suffered the same loss. But she had found that he had become even more distant. All he seemed to be capable of was training. And during their missions after the finals, he had been harsh whenever she failed. She knew her performance was poor, but she was distracted and too tired to function properly. Yet, Sasuke ignored her pain. Oddly, it had been Shino who had supported her the most. The boy never really said much, but he genuinely tried to help her, even though he seemed a bit uncomfortable about it. Well, he was an Aburame, Sakura reasoned, dealing with emotions was not exactly their forte. Sakura really didn't know what she would do if he and Ino had not been around her, though. They were her true friends. She glanced over, where Kakashi was talking with Shikaku, seemingly carefree. He had shown hints of concern, but apparently he had no idea of how to help her. His usual apathy had not helped. Her inner voice, which had become very silent after she learned that Mebuki had died, had raged in her head for quite a while, after Kakashi had awkwardly tried to explain how shinobi usually dealt with loss. She could not fathom how her sensei could talk like that, when she knew that he had lost friends and family as well. Then again, Kakashi had never been too great when it came to dealing teenagers. She sighed, glancing around at the people enjoying themselves at the party. How could they celebrate, she wondered, with all the death, all the destruction in their village? And these people are celebrating a promotion. Ino had more or less dragged her here, saying that it would cheer her up a bit, but now the only thing that resounded through Sakura's head was, what am I doing here? Oblivious to Sakura, who tried to make contact with him again, Sasuke sat in a corner, gritting his teeth. Had the Nara attempted to insult him by inviting Haku? Why would he suffer to look at that brat ever again? Sasuke had even tried to leave, the moment that he first saw Haku, but on his way out Ino had spied him. The annoying blonde had more or less dragged him back, nagging him just like she did during the times at the academy. Sasuke had been so annoyed that he had not even noticed that Sakura had not even joined Ino, despite how they usually bickered amongst themselves whenever Sasuke was involved. Thinking back on this, Sasuke noticed the lost look in his teammate's eyes. He grimaced. What is she whining about this time? She had a family, she is loved, but she seems to take that happiness for granted. Even with her loss, she still has family. But she ignores that, always chasing me, while I would have given everything to have my clan. My family. Sasuke shook his head, trying to get rid of the melancholic feeling. Her behavior had always annoyed him, as she took for granted the very things he longed for. She shouldn't complain. She only lost her mother, while I lost my entire clan. She lost her mother to a mere accident, while my clan got murdered. How could she even consider her pain to be equal to mine? She can't even begin to understand me. Her words, questioning how he would understand the pain of her loss, had hurt him more than he would ever admit. Still, this was the same girl who had thoughtlessly mentioned that Naruto had behaved so badly because he had no family, when the blonde had left their team. What did she know? As annoying as his former teammate may be, somewhere in the back of his head, Sasuke knew that Naruto would be one of the very few who might understand his pain. At least he has lost a clan as well. Not that it matters. He is merely an Uzumaki, while I'm a genius from the Uchiha clan. Any comparison is pointless, Sasuke grimaced, as he stood up in order to slip out. Ino was talking to Haku, so he would get out without trouble this time, Sasuke anticipated. He did not bother to see the single tear on Sakura's cheek, as she watched her crush completely ignore her as he left. Fleeing from Ino's slightly out of control temper, she still could not understand that Haku thought so little of Sasuke. After she asked him about their match, Rock Lee noticed Sakura sitting apart from everyone else, with a sad expression. He decided to go talk to her. What's wrong, Sakura-san? Lee dropped his oversized brows into a frown. Nothing is wrong, Lee-san. Sakura tried to smile, but her attempt was not very convincing, even to Rock Lee, who was not the most observant genin in Konoha. He decided to sit down next to her. He knew he had promised to protect her till his death, but her current problems did not seem to be solvable with a mere exchange of blows. Still, he was adamant that he should at the very least try to help her. Well, you look very sad. I know you don't want to talk about it, Sakura-san, but is it wrong to worry? No, but Sakura sighed, and she dropped her poor attempt of a smile, revealing a sad grimace. During the invasion, my mother died, a snake. A wall toppled over, and she. Sakura sniffled. I see. Lee swallowed. My condolences for your loss. Thanks, Lee-san. Sakura smiled weakly, now more genuine. I didn't want to go to this party, she confessed. I understand, this is hardly the time for celebration, especially for those who lost their loved ones, Lee said, and to Sakura's surprise he too had a pained expression. He noticed her look. I'm sorry, I just recalled something rather unyouthful. Lee sighed. He didn't really want to talk about it, but he thought it might distract Sakura a little from her own pain, as well as showing that he understood her, before he attempted to cheer her up. A year before I finally became a genin. Well, I have never known my father. He died in a mission when my mother was pregnant with me. So, my mother was everything to me. She told me how she and father had fled to Konoha. Even though we were clanless, and rather poor, she ensured that I always enjoyed my youth. Until the year before I became genin, my mother was always sickly, and then her situation worsened. Lee bowed his head a little. Sakura had always thought that the boy was brimming with confidence, to the extent that it even made him look like an airhead. How wrong had she been about him? She suffered for months, and promised she would never leave me, Lee eventually continued. She was strong, but, well, she lost the fight. I know now that it was inevitable, but back then. I just remembered how I felt back then. I never knew, Sakura admitted. Not many people do. Lee smiled gently, but it taught me how death is part of life. Neji, my teammate, always says that fate decides everything. But I disagree. Life simply happens to us, Lee gestured. But even still, we should never give up hope. If we think life is already decided for us, and that we are merely victims of fate, how can we say we are actually alive? Sakura re-examined the boy, who had surprised her with his way of thinking. I promised my mom that I would live my life in her honor and that I would never give up, no matter what, Lee said seriously. I know you are in pain now, Sakura-san, but please do not give up. If you want to honor your mother, live. Sakura felt tears dripping down her cheeks. She knew that the boy was right, but still, it felt as if someone had ripped out a piece of her heart the moment her mother died, and she could not ignore that pain. Thank you, Lee-san, she finally managed. I'll try. Naruto had fled away the moment Ino had charged in to ask Haku why he had hurt poor Sasuke-kun so much. He still chuckled a bit, as the expression on Haku's face had been priceless. Ino was still just as annoying as she had been when he had first met her on the academy. Bossy, nagging, and always wanting to know everything. Still, he hoped she would never change. Why do some people never stop being curious? Naruto tsked to himself. At least I get to speak the Mizukage now. All that's left for me is to get to Neji, Naruto mused. Though I hope the Hyuga aren't going to kill him, with their rubbish about laws. Yo, Naruto, over here, Kiba shouted, waking Naruto from his thoughts. Naruto blinked. Food, drinks, all you need is here, Kiba exclaimed. Naruto could see he was right. Akamaru had eaten his fill, and stretched out on the table, because he had eaten too much to keep standing up. Hurry, before Choji gobbles it all up. Kiba laughed. Choji sat at his own table, which was now half empty. Apparently the Akamichi translated the concept of party as an all-you-can-eat contest. Not that anyone was foolish enough to try to compete with him. Well, Naruto might have, but there was no Ichiraku ramen available. Thanks, Naruto smiled, and he joined Kiba, Hinata, and Shino at their table. Shino told them about his time in Team 7, and how Sakura was currently in a depression because her mother had died. But before the mood could get too depressed, a black and white blur flew by, followed by Naruto getting knocked over by another blur. What is it this time? Naruto sighed, lifting up Konohamaru by his scarf. Why can't you leave Chi alone? I see, Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. You can come out as well, Hanabi-sama, I know you're there, he offered, knowing full well that the proud Hyuga girl would never reveal the truth about their chase after Chi. Naruto, of course, knew all along that both kids had made a bet on who could catch Chi first. Occasionally, he had even enjoyed helping Chi with tormenting the kids. He had to admit the cat knew her pranks well. Hinata smiled when she saw a brown-haired shadow shoot away. Now, Konohamaru-chan, Naruto chided him, lowering the boy before his grip on the scarf strangled the child. Please don't trouble that poor cat like that. But she said. Naruto sighed. She. The cat moved closer, attempting, but completely failing, to look innocent, with her long fluffy tail wiggling behind her. Fought. Do I need to ask Akko? Naruto threatened. She sweated for a few seconds before she broke. That. I might have jumped on Scarfy 2 Legs' head, she admitted. I might also have been laughing at him but only a little. I didn't know that Chibi White Eyes was close, though. Hanabi-chan asked father if they could focus their training on stealth. Hinata filled in an explanation, much to the unwelcome surprise of both Chi and Konohamaru. I guess you need to ask Ji-san for some extra training too, if you don't want to lose to her. Naruto smirked, regarding Konohamaru with seriousness. Ji-san is still not feeling well, Konohamaru said with a sad expression. But I'm sure Uncle Smokey will help me. Not a bad alternative, indeed. Asuma-sensei was over there. Last time I saw him, Naruto pointed. He is bound to be around a woman with black hair and red eyes. He always is, he chuckled. Okay. Thanks boss, Konohamaru shouted as he ran off with a huge grin. Naruto suppressed a sad sigh. Telling the boy that he would soon lose his grandfather would be cruel, besides it was not up to him to tell Konohamaru anyway. It was between Hiruzen and Konohamaru. He pitied the young boy. This is going to be, she started. Troublesome, Shikamaru completed her sentence, as he walked up to them, followed by Tenten. Asuma-sensei's nephew, isn't it? I thought I saw that kid a few times before. He sucks at camouflage though, and why is he always goofing around with fireworks? Yeah, Kiba answered. He's the Hokage's grandson. Complete pain in the ass, but for the most part a cute little brat. And the square rock disguise at least warns you before he starts ranting at his great boss, Naruto again. Gives you plenty of time to run away. He looked like a little Asuma, a little non-smoking Asuma, Shikamaru sighed. Gay, I'll remember the Uncle Smokey nickname though. Hinata. Tenten asks. May I ask you something? Of course, although Hinata had already guessed what the girl would ask. About Neji. We keep hearing that he is occupied with clan business, Tenten frowned. But Guy-sensei refuses to tell us what is really going on. We can't tell either, Naruto replied when he saw Hinata hesitate. Not yet, at least. I'm sorry, but it's in Neji's best interests for us to remain silent, he added, looking at Hinata. I see, Tenten said, though her disappointment was obvious. I'm serious, Tenten. Naruto frowned a bit. I don't intend to lie to you, so this is all I can say. The last thing I heard was that his wounds were healing properly, so don't worry about that. Tenten didn't seem too happy about it, but it didn't stop her or the rest of the group from having fun. They shared their stories about their adventures as genin, and just life in general. Naruto was a bit surprised to see how tolerant they all were. He almost felt accepted by the entire group. Well, the entire group except Sasuke, who had left at some point. Nobody could tell when. And Sakura, who said it was about time she to drag her father out of the nearest pub. After she left, Lee soon returned to his regular over-enthusiastic self. Apparently, he had been talking with Sakura for most of the time, but now he focused on Naruto. Naruto's ears still rang from the volume that Lee had used when he loudly demanded his rematch, which resulted in Kiba challenging Naruto, and thus vying with Lee for the right of fighting Naruto first. Naruto had found it amusing to see the both of them challenging each other, in the end. At least they didn't team up against me, Naruto thought. Both of them are annoying to fight in pure taijutsu, and if they teamed up, dealing with them would be a real pain. The banter between Lee and Kiba continued until Chi somehow smuggled some sake onto the stage. They all ended up being lucky, according to Guy, as Lee drank the entire bottle all in once, mistaking it for a bottle of water. If Lee had not passed out immediately, things might have gone badly, very badly, Guy fretted. Naruto still wasn't sure why, but he was pretty sure that she would want to continue experimenting on this soon, he saw it in her eyes. He couldn't decide whether to help her or to forbid it. However, after one more youthful shout coming from Guy, Naruto was pushed over the brink. Consequences be damned. Those two are an insult to every green-clad shinobi in Konoha. To Naruto, who had more or less copied Jiraiya's style, Lee was also an insult for each Hokage that copied their sensei's sense of fashion. Naruto found the way his classmates acted to be better than he would have ever expected. For example, now that Shikamaru knew that Naruto would be sticking with Gaara for the time being, he had offered to drop by every now and then. He even promised to teach Naruto shogi. Hinata had managed to silence a giggle when she heard that. Haruki may have succeeded in teaching Naruto etiquette, but teaching him games like chess and shogi was, well, the 2 times Haruki had tried were still a subject of an occasional conversation amongst her clan members. The question of how one of the pieces had managed to pierce 3 walls and murder an innocent carrier pigeon was still a mystery that remained to be solved. Naruto had claimed that he had been experimenting on a new seal, but the consensus was that Naruto had just been annoyed by being beaten so thoroughly. Hearing Shikamaru's offer, Choji immediately promised to come along, with the added question on which flavor of chips Naruto liked most. Naruto still didn't understand why Ino and Shikamaru suddenly became frantic and changed the subject. Apparently the flavor of chips was a sensitive subject within Team 10. With Team 10 promising to visit, Tenten promised that her team would visit too. Besides that, they still had to keep their promises to each other. Naruto would teach her some seals, while Tenten would teach him weapon use. Moreover, she had confided to him that she wouldn't last long without Neji around, as Lee and Guy together were simply too much for one sane person to deal with. However, what startled Naruto the most was that at one point, Shikamaru had said that Naruto now was the village's hero, and that many people recognized him as the one who stopped Tsuna's Jinchuriki, thus preventing a lot of damage that would have followed an Ikibi rampage through the village. It was an odd sensation for Naruto. Pride. Relief. I wonder what I just felt, Naruto mused as they walked inside. It had gone dark, and the Jonin had gone home, with Asuma dragging along Konohamaru. Teams 8 and 10 plus Tenten, Guy had carried the still unconscious Lee home, had decided to stick around for some more fun. Somewhere along the ride Shino had also left. But sadly, none of them could have said when. Haku was a different story. Apparently Ino had scared him off. Naruto was still puzzled that the pupil of Zabuza, the fearsome demon of the hidden mist, could have become terrified. But Ino had always been a bit excessive when the matter had something to do with Sasuke. During the party's progress, A lone figure was watching over the group of genin, the two promoted chunin, and their jonin sensei. His kept his presence cloaked, hidden from all others, as he studied the expressions and behavior of each teen. He had been selected for this job due to his heritage. He was capable of lurking around, while remaining completely undetected. Not even a jonin would sense him. But right now, he was not following his employer's interests and directions to inspect the Jinchuriki. Interesting as it may be, the man found it far more intriguing to observe another young boy. After all this time, how had the boy developed? This is the place, Chi-sama. Asterisk. Yes, Zero. The greenhouse should be around the corner. Asterisk. Are we really going to destroy food? Sakana asks, saddened by the idea. Chi, the leader of the three cats, looked at her red-furred underling. Tomatoes are not edible, asterisk, Chi hissed. I can't understand how those two legs can like them. I promise you, Munchy four leg, that we get proper loot on our next heist, okay? Asterisk. So what is the plan today? Zero sighed, after he saw Sakana's eager nod. Ino-sama is currently away, but she will probably start looking around again when we don't get home around dinner. After the duck incident, the inhabitant of this dump placed several traps around the compound. It took me a while before I figured out the safe routes, but I need you two brothers to keep an eye on the surroundings. He may be a two-leg, but he is not completely stupid. Asterisk. She watched Zero and Sakana go to their respective vantage points, and then moved on to the greenhouse. Thanks to watching Whisker Two-Leg, I have really gotten a lot better at using my chakra. Hey, Grumpy Two-Leg won't know what hit his precious tomatoes. I'll shred the plants to splinters. Still chuckling, she slipped past the fence, and opened the door to the greenhouse, only to be startled by an unknown voice. So you really managed to avoid all those traps. Pretty impressive. Asterisk. Oh, and you can use the human tongue as well. It's been a while since I met one of your kin, Bakeneko-san. Asterisk. Who the heck are you? She wondered. Where? Ah, that old gray tomcat up there. What a sneaky bastard. Sudarenja is my name. Or just Pseudo, that's how everyone calls me. Well, everyone. As you can see, this place is rather abandoned, apart from my old master's younger brother. Asterisk. You live at Grumpy Two-Legs compound. Asterisk. I am a noble servant to the Uchiha clan, yes. Asterisk. Well, isn't that great? Asterisk, she remarked sarcastically. So what are you going to do? Stop me? Asterisk. Why would I do that? I didn't stop you last time when you herded all those ducks into his room, did I? It was his own fault, for not securing his place any better. And it is his responsibility to keep his place tidy, not yours. Besides, your pranks distracted Sasuke-san a bit from his solitude. Asterisk. You care about his housecleaning skills. She frowned. Will not allow Sasuke-san to desecrate Itachi-sama's house, asterisk, Pseudo huffed. Itachi-sama may have left after that tragic night, but that does not mean Sasuke-san is allowed to make a mess of the place. Asterisk. He has seemed rather obsessive about order and cleanliness. Asterisk. I have taught him well, asterisk, Pseudo smirked. After the family died, Sasuke-san was rather lethargic. He did not move, did not eat, did not clean himself. The house became a mess. So I punished him, made him move. He may be abandoned and alone, but I will not allow him to let chaos spread through this place. Asterisk. How did you do this? Asterisk. I peed on everything that he left out of place. Everything has a place where it belongs. Whenever something was out of place, I marked it for Sasuke-san, so that he knew he needed to clear it up, and put his belongings in the places where they belonged. Even in his saddened mood, young Sasuke-san hated peed upon shoes. It was an effective way of making him move around. Asterisk. So you are not loyal to Grumpy Two-Leg. Asterisk. I take it you are referring to Sasuke-san when talking about this, Grumpy Two-Leg. Asterisk. Yup. I don't really bother remembering the names that all those two legs give to things. I just name it as I see it. Asterisk. Eccentric. It seems to be a Bakeneko thing. Asterisk. You met one of my tribe. Asterisk. When I was younger, I lived at a different place. Young Master Itachi met me there, and I have followed him since that day. Well, until he disappeared, asterisk, Pseudo sighed. But that is years ago now. Asterisk. So you do not mind me wrecking this place? She looked at all the tomato plants. Not really. Asterisk pseudo shrugged. But I would consider another course of action. If you challenge Sasuke-san again, he will likely take even more drastic safety measures. On the other hand, if you leave him alone. I heard you were planning more heists, so perhaps you need a suitable hideout. Asterisk. She frowned. A hideout could be convenient, yes. Asterisk. Then I suggest you leave Sasuke-san's precious tomatoes alone, so that he doesn't notice that you and you followers have been here. Asterisk. A bit cautious, she wondered why this cat suggested such a thing. What's in it for you? Asterisk. Unlike the two goons you have as your lookouts, I am a trained ninako, asterisk pseudo smirked. Joining that little gang of yours would be a nice way to get some relief from my boredom here. Asterisk. Sweet. She laughed. Cry havoc, and let slip the cats of war. Uh-huh. Right. Pseudo deadpanned. You do that, while I mark these gardening gloves. Sasuke-san should have put them back in the compartment where they belong, asterisk pseudo said, walking over to the gloves and squatting upon them. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.